Chapter 368, Feng Wu, Help. Feng Wu said calmly, drinking it will instantly induce a miscarriage. A non-pregnant person will have bloodshot eyes and bleed through their eyes, nose, ears and mouth. It'll be lethal. Before Feng Wu finished talking, Linyuan darted a glance at Feng. With a wave of his hand, Feng took hold of Yan Yan and forced her mouth open with his free hand. Linyuan tilted that vial. The potion inside flowed out and poured down Yan Yan's throat. It might seem a lengthy process in description, but everything happened in a split second. Before anyone had time to react, Feng had tossed Yan Yan on the ground like a piece of garbage. See? So easy. Linyuan darted a look at Feng Wu, who stood there with her mouth falling open. It was so interesting to see the girl so shocked. Linyuan felt much better now. Feng Wu stared at Linyuan in a daze. The same crown prince that had always sabotaged her missions was working with her now. Was he planning something? She found it hard to believe. And it had only been a second since Yan Yan fell to the ground. Cough, cough. Holding her own throat, Yan Yan kept on coughing until she felt like she was going to cough her lungs out. Sticking her fingers down her throat, she tried to force herself to throw up so that she could spit out the potion. However, while she was doing that, wretch, Yan Yan spat out a mouthful of blood. Feng said coldly, "The potion is in your blood." "No, no, I don't want to die. No. Don't." Frightened by her own blood, Yan Yan burst into tears. Her trembling voice was teary and she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Staring at Yan Yan, Mrs. Yan opened her mouth, but didn't know what to say. Sir Yan tried to speak, but he then saw the grim look on Linyuan's emotionless face, and he decided to keep his silence. "I don't want to die. Get me the antidote. Mum, help me." Yan Yan howled and wrapped her arms around Mrs. Yan's leg. She was greatly shaken by what was going on, and those tears and her screams were genuine. Through her reaction, she had admitted to hiding the juice of dry ginger grass in her bracelet. But that wasn't enough. Feng Wu had to make sure that Yan Yan said it out loud. "Yan Yan, it's the poison you hid yourself. Call it reaping what you sow, I'm not to be blamed for this." Feng Wu smirked. Dignity was nothing compared to one's life. Scared out of her wits, Yan Yan rushed to Feng Wu's side and wrapped herself around the latter's leg. She cried in despair. "Feng Wu. Aren't you a great doctor? Help me. Please. I'll do anything. Just help me." Feng Wu looked down at Yan Yan with a half-smile. "Help you? Did you think about what would happen to Lady Tang when you did what you did?" Yan Yan felt her heart racing and her ears rumbling. Her head hurt so bad that it felt like it was going to split open. She thought that she was really going to die. Flustered, Yan Yan cried out loud, "I didn't mean to. I'm going to lose everything if she has a son. I really had no choice. Feng Wu, help me. Help me." Everyone thought Yan Yan was delirious. Why was she asking Feng Wu for help? Was this Miss Wu such a great doctor? Chapter 369, Your Royal Highness, How Can You Stand It? Meanwhile, many had realized another thing. Yan Yan had really poisoned Lady Tang. She had admitted it herself. Sir Yan took a deep breath and closed his eyes. A stupid alliance could do more damage than a formidable enemy. He had known from the start that Yan Yan was the real culprit and Feng Wu was innocent, but he had still coerced and bribed, trying his best to exonerate Yan Yan of the charge. But what did Yan Yan do? Even a pig was smarter than she was. Sir Yan thought he was going to have a stroke. How could Yan Yan cry into Feng Wu's lap now? Did she have no idea at all that she had been set up by Feng Wu from the very beginning? Sir Yan wanted to give his daughter a reminder, but Linyuan cast a dangerous and grim look at him, which successfully frightened the father. He didn't dare defy the crown prince. Not in a million years. Linyuan then darted an arrogant look at Feng Wu. It took you so long to take care of such a petty thing. You'd be dead by now without my help. She should get on her knees and thank him now. Feng Wu got Jun Linyuan's implied message right away, which made her roll her eyes. Jun Linyuan, are you an idiot? Since when do I need your help? She had had 3 backup plans ready. And she could have finished Yan Yan off with any one of them like crushing an ant. Everyone was shocked by Feng Wu's words. Exactly how bold was this woman? Not only did she address the crown prince by his name, she had also insulted him, calling him an idiot. She was so dead. Feng was going to throttle her. Hence, all heads turned in unison. Everyone eyed Feng in excitement and expectation. Now! Hadn't he been just as relentless and exact when he had grabbed Yan Yan by the neck? However, Feng only rubbed his nose and fell back. He then stood behind Jun Linyuan with his head lowered and his hands perfectly still, ignoring all the attention. The crowd was speechless. Then, they turned to look at Jun Linyuan instead. Your Royal Highness, she just called you an idiot. How can you stand that? The teenager was supposed to be one of the most powerful men in the land, whose wrath could set the sky on fire and cause earthquakes. The sanctity of his honor shouldn't be challenged. As expected, Jun Linyuan kept his cold gaze on Feng Wu. Feng Wu glared back, her gaze equally intense. She reminded Jun Linyuan of an angry little lion. The longer Jun Linyuan looked at her, the more interesting he found her. Before he knew it, he had raised a hand and was about to rub her head. He was halfway there when he realized what he was doing and he put his hand back down in embarrassment. Crossing his hands behind his back and raising his chin, he said in a haughty voice, "You two-faced woman." No, this wasn't right. The crowd was completely baffled. What they hoped to see was the crown prince grabbing Feng Wu by her thin neck and snapping it with a crack. They were hoping to see the beauty dead. Not this, affectionate bickering. What were the two of them doing, being all lovey-dovey? Stop it. Bah, no, that was definitely not what was happening here. The crown prince and Feng Wu found each other repulsive. There was no lovey-dovey thing going on between them. The crowd consisted mostly of teenage girls, who were a very imaginative lot. All their eyes were on Feng Wu now and they prayed for Feng Wu to piss off the crown prince again. And Feng Wu didn't let them down. She snorted and revealed her plan. Plan A, I would let Yan Yan pretend. Plan B. Plan C. Feng Wu was very pleased with her plans and she darted a proud look at Jun Linyuan. Chapter 370, Feng Wu pokes Jun Linyuan's waist with a finger. Crossing her hands behind her back, Feng Wu stuck out her chest and snorted contemptuously. Without you, I could have still gotten her to do exactly what I wanted, as easy as that. She didn't stand a chance. The crowd was dumbfounded. She had 3 backup plans. And she could indeed use any of them to defeat Yan Yan completely. Feng Wu was amazing. No. That wasn't the point. The point was that Feng Wu was bold enough to provoke the crown prince like that. How dare she, when the crown prince had helped her? This was beyond being proud. She had to have a death wish. All the girls looked expectantly at Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness, how can you let her do that to you? Jun Linyuan ground his teeth. No wonder she hadn't asked him for help. She had everything under control. However, it was really interesting to see the girl defy him like this. Moving closer to Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan smiled wickedly and breathed into her ear. Hey, do you still want that broken star piece? Yes. Feng Wu's eyes sparkled and her face lit up. The crown prince was very pleased. Have as many backup plans as you want, but you can't get that lock open on your own. And he was right. Raising his chin proudly, Jun Linyuan looked up at the sky and into the distance that he made it so clear, beg me. Now. Feng Wu snorted. She would never do that, for she could always wait for another chance. Someone as smart as she was would never be daunted by such a petty setback. However, Feng Wu realized that something was very wrong when she felt around the inside of her sleeve. Her heart sank. That key! The key she had taken from Sir Yen was gone. It had been there a minute ago. Feng Wu looked down at Jun Linyuan's hand involuntarily, and as expected, she saw it in his palm. The Crown Prince whispered in her ear, "Well, if Sir Yen finds out that you..." Jun Lin Yuan. Feng Wu lowered her voice and squeezed out that name through gritted teeth. Jun Linyuan was very pleased to see the girl flare up. His chin still raised, he darted a look at Feng Wu. Feng Wu took the hint right away. Beg him now or he would show everyone the key. With Jun Linyuan's words, everyone would believe that she had stolen the key. Feng Wu took a deep breath. She had almost found him lovely when he had taken care of Yen Yen just then. But he was back to his old self already. 3. 2. Raising his chin and crossing his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan looked so proud that Feng Wu wanted to scream. However, a slim, fair finger jabbed Jun Linyuan in his waist. Yes. Jun Linyuan put on a solemn face. This man. He was really pushing it. Feng Wu was so mad. However, she had no choice but to take a deep breath to fight back her anger before forcing out an ingratiating smile. She had to try so hard that the muscles on her face twitched. Your Royal Highness, Feng Wu poked Jun Linyuan's waist again. She had to do it. She could try to steal the broken star piece later, but she couldn't afford to be charged for theft. No one else could intimidate her, for she knew that she was superior in intelligence and mindset. However, Chapter 371, Jun Linyuan doesn't want to speak to dumb little Feng Wu anymore. With Jun Linyuan, the smart guy who had a habit of sabotaging her missions, Feng Wu really wasn't sure what would happen. Jun Linyuan was all cheerful inwardly, but he managed to keep his stunning face very straight. He was solemn, stern, and utterly unapproachable. The crowd couldn't hear their conversation and they had no idea what those two were discussing. All they saw was Feng Wu eagerly begging for something, while the proud crown prince ignored her. That Feng Wu. Why was she so close to their crown prince? Who did she think she was? Her engagement to the crown prince was already cancelled. She should keep her distance. The teenage girls glared at Feng Wu with jealousy until their eyes turned red from all the staring. Feng Wu had no idea what was going on in their heads. She poked Jun Linyuan's waist again. Jun Linyuan. Speak, the crown prince said unhurriedly. Can you give me back my key? Please. Feng Wu swallowed the humiliation silently. Feng Wu kept telling herself in her head that to get what she wanted, she had to be able to adapt to any situation. This was nothing. Jun Linyuan darted a haughty look at Feng Wu and snorted. That's all you can do? Ha! Feng Wu was at a loss. She was trying to steal from Sir Yen. What more did he want from her? The crown prince was very pleased to see the confused look on the girl's exquisite face. It was so nice to have the girl beg him for help. Although he had no idea why he felt that way, he was smart enough to realize how to stretch that feeling. He would make Feng Wu owe him. After that, he would ask her to repay him every day, and he would be able to see her flare up like a little angry lion all the time. It was so much fun just thinking about it. At that thought, Jun Linyuan raised the hand that was holding the key. Feng Wu's heart raced. Was he really going to show the others that key? Feng Wu grabbed Jun Linyuan by his wrist without hesitation. Boom! The teenage girls in the crowd thought they were going to explode and their pupils contracted. His hand. Feng Wu had touched His Royal Highness's hand. The crown prince was famous for being a neat freak. He would cut Feng Wu's hands off for sure. Many found the upcoming gory scene frightening and they covered their eyes with their hands, but they still couldn't help but peek through the gaps between their fingers. As soon as Feng Wu grabbed Jun Linyuan's wrist, the crown prince felt as if electricity was rushing through his veins. His heart raced, his back stiffened, and he stood there dazed, not knowing how to react. Feng Wu had no idea of any of that. Shaking Jun Linyuan's arm nervously, she pleaded in a pitiful voice, "Jun Linyuan, are you going to?" "No." "Are you going to steal the broken star piece for me, then?" Feng Wu looked up at him eagerly. Speechless, Jun Linyuan gave her a contemptuous, "Are you an idiot?" look. "What's wrong with you? Who do you think I am? Do I need to steal when I want something?" the crown prince said with a smirk. Feng Wu darted him a glance. "Do you have a better idea?" Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes. "You need an idea for a petty thing like this?" He didn't want to talk to his dumb little Feng Wu anymore. He then beckoned Sir Yen over with a casual wave of his hand. Sir Yen smiled bitterly. Yen had admitted everything and her future looked very bleak. However, he couldn't take the crown prince's command lightly. He went up to Jun Linyuan in a hurry. Jun Linyuan darted an indifferent look at Sir Yen. Chapter 372, Broken Star Piece. Jun Linyuan's dark eyes reminded Sir Yen of an abyss. Before long, Sir Yan's knees buckled and his heart raced. "I was told that you have a broken piece of something," Jun Linyuan said indifferently. Sir Yan's stomach lurched. The broken star piece? How had His Royal Highness found out about it? Sir Yen began to get a cramp in his belly. "Show me," Jun Linyuan gave him a brooding look and said in that arrogant and matter-of-fact tone. Feng Wu eyed Jun Linyuan with an almost reverent look in her eyes. She felt like giving him a thumbs up. That was awesome. It struck Feng Wu at that moment that when one was so superior in their capability and status, they didn't need to use any sort of tactic. Just like Jun Linyuan, all he needed to do was ask. "I want that and you're going to give it to me." Jun Linyuan was over the moon when he saw the fervent look in Feng Wu's eyes. Sir Yen despaired and he stammered, "Your Royal Highness. As a matter of fact, I do have it here, but the broken star piece can thoroughly remold one's body, and I'm counting on it for my next breakthrough in my cultivation." As Sir Yen put up a feeble resistance, Jun Linyuan looked at him with a half-smile, and the curve of his mouth looked dangerously wicked. With a wave of his hand, the proud crown prince said, "I won't take no for an answer." So, that was it. Who was Sir Yen to say no to the crown prince? Even an experienced bureaucrat like Sir Yen was defeated. "But I can't open it without my key." Sir Yen made one last attempt to resist the request. "Are you sure?" Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes. Sir Yen fumbled around in his sleeves to prove himself. Wait." His hand came out of his sleeve with a key in it. At that moment, all eyes were on Sir Yen. Didn't Sir Yen say that he lost his key? Didn't Yen say that Feng Wu stole Sir Yan's key to open the vault? And didn't Sir Yen accuse Feng Wu of doing that? So, Sir Yen had that key on him all along. That wasn't a very nice thing for Sir Yen to do. For a moment, everyone discussed the matter in low voices. Sir Yen was the minister of the Ministry of Official Personnel and he was in charge of the appointment of all officials. Therefore, no one dared to question Sir Yen publicly, but it didn't stop them from talking behind Sir Yen's back. Sir Yen was baffled himself. How had this happened? He was sure that the key had been lost. Looking up, he was met by Jun Linyuan's brooding gaze. The look the crown prince gave him was worth 1,000 words. Sir Yen felt as if a big hand was gripping his heart and squeezing it hard. What was more important? The key or his own life? Without another word, Sir Yen left, still holding the key. He soon came back with an exquisite rosewood box and handed it over with a bitter smile. "Your Royal Highness, here it is." "Yes. That's it." Before Feng Wu could say anything, Little Phoenix went berserk with excitement in the ring. "Yes. Yes. It's in the box. The broken star piece. You have to have it. You must." Little Phoenix flapped its wings, its face flushed. "Get all 5 of them and your master will wake up." Feng Wu eyed the wooden box eagerly, hoping that Jun Linyuan would give it to her. Chapter 373, Beautiful Master. Feng Wu eyed the exquisite box in Jun Linyuan's hands. Gimme, please give it to me. That was the broken star piece that could save her master. Feng Wu gazed at it anxiously, straining her eyes. You want it? The crown prince's teasing voice rang out next to her. Yes, Feng Wu nodded repeatedly. Seeing little Feng Wu hop around like an adorable puppy, Jun Linyuan was amused. The girl was always so grumpy and wouldn't stop yelling at him. This was his first time seeing her this docile. He wanted to rub her little head so bad. Ahem. Crossing his hands behind his back, he darted a haughty look at Feng Wu. Say please. Wasn't she so proud? He wanted to see her beg him for it. Feng Wu would do anything for that broken star piece, and she blurted out, please. She kept her eyes on the wooden box in Jun Linyuan's hands the entire time, as if drawn by a magnet. Although Feng Wu did what he had asked, the proud crown prince still didn't cheer up. Holding the box, Jun Linyuan racked his brain. He had asked Sir Yen for that broken star piece so that he could give it to Feng Wu. However, would she stay this way if he gave it to her? Once he figured that out, Jun Linyuan changed his mind. He stuffed that small box in his chest pocket and... that was it. Feng Wu cried out in surprise. Her pitiful eyes instantly burst into flames and she glared at Jun Linyuan. Seeing the cute puppy turn into an angry bird in a split second, Jun Linyuan found it very interesting. He cleared his throat and told Sir Yen, I'll take this. After that, Jun Linyuan gave a wave of his hand, crossed his hands behind his back, and left without hesitation. He left, just like that. Feng Wu was exasperated. How could he do that? He had promised that he would give her the broken star piece if she begged him. How could he go back on his word like that? If she knew this was going to happen, she would rather that the piece remain where it was. At least she would be able to steal it from Sir Yen. Why didn't she follow him out? Jun Linyuan slowed down so that Feng Wu could keep up with him. Right now, Feng Wu's fists were clenched in rage and her face was flushed from the agitation. For a moment, she wasn't sure what to do. Follow him. Little Phoenix rolled around in the ring in exasperation. Your master will wake up for a brief moment when each broken piece is placed in his forehead. So just go. Her beautiful master would wake up for a moment with each broken piece. Feng Wu was astonished by that piece of information. My master will wake up. Really? Tears welled up in Feng Wu's eyes. Her beautiful master would wake up for a moment. And he would talk to her. Would she really be able to see her master wake up again? Feng Wu's vision blurred with her tears. Little Phoenix flew around in circles. There are only 5 of them in the entire world. Go with him. Now! That crown prince is so evil. What if he uses it on himself? Chapter 374, The Truth. That made Feng Wu shudder right away. If Jun Linyuan consumed that broken star piece himself, then her beautiful master would. Feng Wu was scared out of her wits in that instant. There was no time to think, and she dashed off like a gust of wind. Everyone else was baffled. Miss Feng Wu followed His Royal Highness out. Just like that? Doesn't she realize how impatient His Royal Highness was with her? Yen took the chance to exclaim, see? I was telling the truth. Feng Wu just can't leave His Royal Highness alone. She's a good-for-nothing and all she knows to do is follow His Royal Highness around. Smack! Sir Yen had had enough and he slapped Yen. If it hadn't been for his imbecilic daughter, the Yen family would never have been humiliated like this today and the crown prince would never have taken that broken star piece, which had taken Sir Yen some painstaking effort to obtain. To make matters worse, the lives of his favorite concubine and his unborn child were hanging in the balance. Sir Yen was furious. Just then, Feng Sun, who had gone to the royal palace to fetch Master Chu, came back with the ladder. After showing Master Chu the way, Feng Sun ran off hurriedly to find Jun Linyuan. With his current status, Sir Yen was able to invite Master Chu over by trying very hard. At that moment, a scream came from inside. Master Chu's face went livid and he glared at Sir Yen. "Can't you see how much pain the lady is in? And all that you people are doing is to stand around here and bicker?" Sir Yen was rendered speechless. He cupped his hands at Master Chu and took the ladder to Lady Tang. Master Chu checked the patient and immediately looked surprised. He cupped his hands at Sir Yen, then turned to leave. Vexed, Sir Yen stopped Master Chu right away. Master Chu was the head of the Bureau of Physicians and the best physician in the imperial city. Master Chu was very straightforward. The lady suffers from chronic poisoning, from a rare toxic mixture of the juices of dark netherworld dragon tongue grass and dry ginger grass. That male fetus is long dead and there's nothing I can do. What? Sir Yen almost blacked out. The old lady, who had managed to stand up with much difficulty, looked dazed, as if she had just been struck by a thunderbolt. A dead fetus? But how? Master Chu snapped. How? Ask whoever poisoned her. This is such bad luck for me. He stormed off after that, as quickly as he had arrived. All of the Yen family were greatly shaken. The old lady said repeatedly, "A male fetus? Male. It was a boy." Sir Yen was too devastated to speak. God knew how desperately he had waited for a male heir all these years. At that thought, Sir Yen darted a vicious glance at Yen Yen, which reminded her of a bloodthirsty wolf. Yen Yen's stomach lurched. Frightened by Feng Wu, Yen Yen had herself admitted in front of everyone that she had poisoned Lady Tang. There was no taking it back now. More than anything, she regretted coming up with this plan. If she hadn't tried to frame Feng Wu, the fact that she had poisoned Lady Tang would never have been exposed. Lady Tang would have had a stillborn baby and lost all of Sir Yan's favor. That way, no one would have linked it to Yen Yen. But now, Yen Yen was too overwhelmed by regret to shed tears. Meanwhile, outside the Yen Manor, Jun Linyuan had gotten into his carriage. "Wait for me. Wait." Feng Sun arrived like a gust of wind and he was going to hop into the carriage. But Chapter 375, Who told you I like that frivolous woman? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Sun grumpily. As soon as he got into the carriage, Feng Sun realized the unusual silence, and the drop in temperature. Boss Jun stared at him unblinkingly and the cold gaze felt like a cold blade on Feng Sun's skin. A chilly sensation ran down Feng Sun's spine. Boss Jun was in a bad mood. Realizing that, Feng Sun cleared his throat. "Well, that thing with Yen Yen needs wrapping up. I'll get on with it." After that, he dashed off without hesitation. Someone had pissed off Boss Jun again, and hanging around that guy would be suicidal at the moment. Feng Sun wasn't that dumb. As soon as he jumped out of the carriage, he saw Feng Wu running toward it. And he grabbed Feng Wu by her arm right away. The sudden intervention made Feng Wu stumble and she almost fell. Feng Sun steadied Feng Wu by wrapping his arm around her waist and he said involuntarily, "Watch out." Neither of them noticed the chilly air spreading out from the carriage a short distance away. "Where are you going?" Seeing that Feng Wu was rushing toward Jun Linyuan's carriage, Feng Sun was scared out of his wits. Feng Wu said, "I need to see Jun Linyuan." "No." Feng Sun turned her down right away. "Not now. Let go of me. Little Feng Wu, please do as I say." "You really can't go there right now," Feng Sun said in exasperation. Boss Jun is in a terrible mood at the moment and whatever you're going to do, you'll only offend him. So, please stay away from the carriage. Feng Wu said, "Just let go of me." Feng Sun was very persistent. "I'm not going to let you get yourself killed." Feng Wu was speechless. Seeing Feng Wu and Feng Sun's interaction, the temperature around the crown prince dropped even further. Frost crept up the inside walls of the carriage and even Feng shuddered inwardly. It was really cold. Feng Sun also sensed the murderous energy in the air and he said earnestly to Feng Wu, "Can't you feel it? That's from Boss Jun. You're asking to get killed if you go to him now." However, Feng Wu couldn't care less about that. She had to have that broken star piece. It was like Little Phoenix said, what if Jun Linyuan consumed that piece himself? There were only 5 of them in the entire world, and without this one, what would happen to her beautiful master? She couldn't risk it. At that thought, Feng Wu pushed Feng Sun away. "I have my own reasons and I have to see Jun Linyuan now. Feng Sun, please stay out of it." At the same time, inside the carriage, Feng darted a look at the crown prince, whose face had turned livid, and he sighed inwardly. Turning the carriage into an icehouse seemed to be the only thing the crown prince knew to do, which definitely wasn't the way to get girls. Should he remind his young master? Being a steward was such a tough job. Feng waved his hands and deliberately instructed the driver, "We're going back now." At those words, the crown prince's face turned as dark as a stormy sky. And he cast a stern look at Feng. "Sir, if you really like Feng Wu," Feng tried to talk some sense into the teenager. "I like her." Jun Linyuan snorted. "Are you blind? Who told you I liked that frivolous woman?" Feng rubbed his nose and smiled bitterly. He really wanted to remind the crown prince that if he kept treating Feng Wu in this manner, he would never win her heart. Chapter 376, Little Feng Wu. Seeing that young Lord Feng still wouldn't let go of Feng Wu, Feng shook his head with a wry smile. Had the crown prince passed on some of his silliness to his friend? "Miss Wu, please get in." Feng invited Feng Wu in. But, Feng Sun frowned and was about to say something, but Feng stopped him with a shake of his head. Feng Wu threw Feng Sun's hands off and dashed into the carriage immediately. Feng Sun was very mad. Why wouldn't little Feng Wu listen to him? Why was she so in love with Boss Jun? The latter would kick her out. However, up until the carriage set out, why hasn't Boss Jun kicked little Feng Wu out? Scratching his head, Feng Sun was amazed. Feng looked up at the sky. How could he make Feng Sun see that the proud crown prince had been waiting there all this time just for Feng Wu? Kick her out? What was Feng Sun thinking? Feng decided to be nice and he reminded Feng Sun, "Young lord, as a matter of fact, His Royal Highness is." "I know," Feng Sun said in a regretful tone. Boss Jun isn't interested in girls and he likes little Feng Wu even less. That girl is so smart, but how can she be so foolish in that respect? I just can't stop her. Sigh. The corner of Feng's mouth twitched and he didn't know what to say. Just as Feng was finally able to come up with a speech that would enlighten young Lord Feng without hurting his pride, Feng Sun's mother beckoned her son over. "My mother needs me. Feng, please keep an eye on little Feng Wu." Feng Sun cupped his hands at Feng, then hurried off. Feng smacked his forehead. This job was so demanding. Back in the carriage, it was deadly silent. The proud crown prince was very generous with the cold air he was giving off, and Feng Wu shivered from the chill. This was so strange. Jun Linyuan had been very demanding only just then. Why was he being so lofty all of a sudden? She would do anything for that broken star piece and her master. Feng Wu made a fist. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu tried to say something to ease the tension. However, as soon as she opened her mouth, Jun Linyuan smiled contemptuously. He was smirking. Feng Wu only found him ridiculous. What was his problem? But, in order to save her beautiful master, she could stand something much worse than a smirk. She was very adaptable that way. Feng Wu moved a little closer in Jun Linyuan's direction. The crown prince turned away in an arrogant manner and looked out the window. However, he wasn't paying any attention to the view outside. "Hey!" Feng Wu poked Jun Linyuan's waist with a finger, but the proud crown prince still ignored her. That pissed Feng Wu off a little. Summoning up her courage, she reached out with a hand, took Jun Linyuan's chin, and turned his head toward her. And their eyes met. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was bone-chillingly cold. Only then did Feng Wu realize what she had done. She let go of Jun Linyuan, stepped back, and said awkwardly, well. What Feng Wu failed to notice was that the crown prince's earlobes had turned pink. Jun Linyuan looked conflicted when he glared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Chapter 377, The Unreasonable Guy. Yes. Feng Wu involuntarily bolted upright. However, the carriage ceiling was too low for that and her head smashed into the hard wooden board overhead. She drew in a pained breath. Jun Linyuan narrowed his eyes a little and he pulled Feng Wu to his side. SSSS, Feng Wu put a hand on her forehead and grimaced in pain. The crown prince brushed away Feng Wu's hand and rubbed her head for her. A warm sensation spread out on Feng Wu's head and the pain eased up right away. Feng Wu was amazed and she looked up at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan wouldn't return her gaze. With a livid face, he went on rubbing her head. An idea then struck Feng Wu. This was a great opportunity for her to steal that broken star piece back. At that thought, Feng Wu felt inside Jun Linyuan's sleeves. Jun Linyuan's back stiffened. What was the girl doing? Searching further up Jun Linyuan's wide sleeves, Feng Wu made sure not to touch him. However, after a while, she realized in dismay that the box wasn't there. Could it be in his chest pocket? Feng Wu moved into action again. Stealthily, she felt around Jun Linyuan's chest. Jun Linyuan stiffened again. And he found it hard to breathe. However, he was secretly pleased. The two-faced girl was taking advantage of him when she thought he wasn't looking. Are you that desperate? Jun Linyuan said in a taunting voice and he caught the fair hand reaching into his chest pocket. Feng Wu said, "You're out of your mind." Am I? Jun Linyuan sat down, then pinned Feng Wu on his lap. That was way too intimate for Feng Wu's taste. She wanted to move away, but Jun Linyuan stopped her by pressing a hand to the back of her head. She could feel the warmth of his skin and his hot breath on her cheeks. Their eyes then met. His brooding eyes looked frighteningly bright now. Jun Linyuan saw vexation and an evasive look on Feng Wu's stunning face. She wanted to run away now. Jun Linyuan smirked. Before Feng Wu could do anything else, he leaned toward her. And they were so close that the tips of their noses touched. Feng Wu's heart raced. Jun Linyuan snorted. You couldn't keep your hands off me and you're running away now. Stop playing hard to get. He moved closer and Feng Wu stopped breathing at the predatory look in his eyes. Feng Wu's head went blank. For she was furious. What did he mean by, can't keep her hands off him? She was only after the broken star piece. And what was that about, playing hard to get? She wasn't interested in him at all. Could this man ever stop flattering himself? Feng Wu pounded on Jun Linyuan's chest with her fists, but Jun Linyuan took her wrists and kissed her even harder. Feng Wu felt like crying. This man was so unreasonable. He ravished her mouth with his unruly tongue. Feng Wu struggled with all her might. With her hands restrained, she kicked him instead. Jun Linyuan turned the two of them around and pinned Feng Wu to the floor. His husky voice sounded quite sexy. Little Feng Wu, enough with this cat and mouse play. He was so sure of himself. Feng Wu was fuming. She wanted to slap herself. What had she been thinking, jumping into Jun Linyuan's carriage? She was too powerless to stop him at this stage. Chapter 378, You Touched Me. Jun Linyuan snickered. You had it coming. What did you think would happen after flirting with me like that? He had figured it out. Since the girl liked him that much and he didn't find her touch repulsive, he would just take her. Maybe this strange feeling would go away after he slept with her. At that thought, Linyuan lowered his head and wanted to kiss her again. Feng Wu raised her hand to slap him. But Linyuan stopped her before she could touch him and he smirked. Do you seriously think I'll let you do that? There is no cat and mouse play and I've never flirted with you. Feng Wu said in exasperation. You touched me, the crown prince said arrogantly. You touched my hands and my chest. Are you going to deny it? That set Feng Wu off and she said with a smirk, I was only looking for the broken star piece, not touching you. Why would I do that when I find you so repulsive? Your Royal Highness, stop flattering yourself. The world seemed to switch to silent mode at Feng Wu's words. Linyuan stiffened and his eyes turned red. He then said between gritted teeth, Feng Wu, I dare you to say that again. Linyuan was furious. Recalling all those occasions when she had been mistaken, Feng Wu was equally infuriated. She snorted. Why would I touch you when I find you so annoying? Your Royal Highness, you think too highly of yourself. Smack! Linyuan's fist came down at Feng Wu. Seeing the formidable fist coming her way, Feng Wu's head went blank and she forgot to breathe. For a moment, she thought she was going to die. However, the fist brushed past her when it almost touched her face. Crack! The fist landed on the floor of the carriage instead. The gust of wind it created felt like a sharp blade on Feng Wu's cheek. The most frightening thing was that the carriage was turned into crumbs by that single strike. And all 4 horses went down on their knees. The driver also knelt down and didn't dare move. The crown prince's wrath was as formidable as an earthquake, which was more than a single carriage could take. All was deadly silent. Even the air seemed to freeze. Feng had been following them in his own carriage and he had been planning to talk to the crown prince when they got back. The teenager needed to realize that he could only win a girl's heart with gentle words, not harsh ones. Then he saw the carriage in front of him collapse. And he also saw the crown prince on top of little Feng Wu. That was, humph. The proud teenager snorted, rose to his feet, and darted a contemptuous glance at Feng Wu. Very contemptuous. Feng felt so helpless. That bratty crown prince. How would he ever get any girl? He was practically chasing them away. When he saw the state Feng Wu was in, Feng felt even more helpless. Feng Wu's eyes were bloodshot red and her face was ghastly pale. What was worse, there were a few bloody scratches on her cheek. Miss Wu, your face is injured. Was it? Feng Wu touched her face and her hand came back covered with blood. Linyuan's fist had glanced off it when it brushed past her. Feng Wu gritted her teeth and threw a dirty look at Linyuan. She then cupped her hands at Feng. Thank you for your concern. I'll be on my way. Feng hesitated. The 2 teenagers had obviously been fighting, and if he let Miss Wu leave now, the crown prince would only sulk when he got back home. The entire manor would be turned upside down. Chapter 379, She wouldn't be intimidated. Feng smiled apologetically. Miss Wu, the crown prince's residence is only a few miles away. How about you come back with us so that we can treat your wound? That won't be necessary. I don't deserve that sort of attention, Feng Wu said grumpily and turned to leave. How dare you leave now? The arrogant crown prince almost exploded. Couldn't this woman see that she was hurt? Why did she still want to leave? Seeing the scratches on Feng Wu's cheek, Linyuan narrowed his eyes, and somehow, he couldn't give vent to his frustration. Stop right there. Linyuan's face was livid. Feng Wu ignored him. Why should she listen to him? Who did he think he was? One more step and I'll kill Feng Xiaoqi. Linyuan's cold voice rang out behind Feng Wu. And Feng Wu was furious. Poor Xiaoqi. She hadn't had a chance to see him after he was taken away, and she had no idea how he was doing. Thump. 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 Feng Wu turned around and went up to Linyuan. She was stomping her feet so hard that she looked like a cannonball. She looked June Linyuan in the eye. Her limpid eyes were bloodshot red and she looked like she was going to explode at any moment. She was so intimidating. Her smooth, exquisite cheek now had 3 tiny scratches on it. Perfection had been ruined and it was a painful sight. When he looked into Feng Wu's infuriated eyes, somehow, June Linyuan wasn't so sure about himself anymore. Evading those frighteningly bright eyes, he looked down and saw the 3 bloody scratches on her left cheek. Instantly, something painful filled his chest. June Linyuan, what's wrong with you? Feng Wu was ablaze with anger. Did I offend you in northern border city? Have I mistreated you? Have I provoked you somehow? And is this how you repay my hospitality? What has Xiaoqi ever done to deserve this? You snatched him just like that. He's only 12 years old. My family had to move all the way from northern border city to the imperial capital all because of you. Do you have any idea how dangerous the journey was? And do you know how dangerous the imperial capital is for us? And how difficult my mother's life will be here? Do you know how many men are drooling over her? You're the superior crown prince of the empire and one word from you can change a person's entire life. Fine, you're invincible like that. But have you ever considered people like us? Feng Wu was too angry to choose her words carefully. She stepped forward with each sentence and June Linyuan fell back as she pressed on. In the end, June Linyuan's way was blocked by a tree and he had nowhere to go. When he looked at Feng Wu again, the rage in his eyes was gone, replaced by pity. June Linyuan. I hate you. Feng Wu roared. On any given day, the proud crown prince would yell back, I can say the same to you. However, all he did now was rub his nose as his eyes darted around. His gaze sharpened when it landed on Feng. After hanging around the crown prince for so many years, Feng took the hint right away. His royal highness was embarrassed and he needed a way out. Feng was supposed to create that way now. Ahem, Feng said with a kind smile. I don't think we'll be able to settle anything out here on the road. How about we go back to the crown prince's residence or the Feng manor to talk it over? The Feng manor? Feng Wu shook her head involuntarily when she recalled how snobbish her uncle was. She couldn't take them back there. To the crown prince's residence, then. Feng Wu snorted. She wasn't going to let June Linyuan intimidate her. Chapter 380, Still. Not. Talking. June Linyuan had destroyed his own carriage and Feng's carriage was the only one left. After the 2 teenagers got in, Feng stood behind the carriage and sighed. That was the only carriage they had now. Destroy this one and everyone would have to walk. Sigh. The crown prince was the heir born to inherit the entire empire. He had been as disciplined as an 80-year-old since he was little. Never had Feng expected that June Linyuan would lose control like everyone else when he was around a girl he liked. Well, that was what teenagers were supposed to be like. Crossing his hands behind his back, Feng beamed. Inside the carriage, neither Feng Wu nor June Linyuan would look at the other and it was very awkward. June Linyuan then stared at Feng Wu, but Feng Wu turned to look the other way. She refused to talk to him. June Linyuan's attitude had been softened by Feng Wu's speech just then. However, now that he had calmed down, he was back to his old arrogant self. Darting a glance at Feng Wu, he said, "That was very bold of you to talk to a crown prince like that." Feng Wu kept her face emotionless and snorted inwardly. Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't answer, June Linyuan glanced at her again. "And you yelled at me. Do you know that you can be executed for that?" Feng Wu grunted, but still wouldn't talk to him. June Linyuan gave her an arrogant look. "That was just an angry outburst, wasn't it? I know you still like me a lot." Feng Wu turned the other way to look at the view outside. Actually, she was listening to Little Phoenix's complaints. Little Feng Wu. Ah! Bad news. By now, Feng Wu had become inured to Little Phoenix's constant and agitated screams. She asked in resignation, "What now? Weren't you all over that bad prince's mouth just then?" "I wasn't." Feng Wu snapped. "Fine, that bad prince was all over your mouth. That's not the point. The point is that when that happened, I realized that you can no longer suck any abnormal flame out of him." Little Phoenix said with a long face. "I've lost my chance to get out. Again." Feng Wu smacked her forehead. "You have to think of a way." "Ah! I can teleport you everywhere when I get out and no one will be able to catch you that easily." "Ah!" The screaming gave Feng Wu a headache. "But what can I possibly do?" That abnormal flame was removed. "Ah! Look! What's that bad prince holding?" Little Phoenix trembled with excitement. Feng Wu turned her gaze back to Jun Linyuan's hands. Right now, he was playing with a golden bead. Feng Wu sensed something familiar. It was that abnormal flame, the one Little Phoenix had been dreaming of. That excited Feng Wu and she almost jumped at Jun Linyuan. Playing with the abnormal flame bead, Jun Linyuan was trying to figure out a way to get Feng Wu talking. That bead, Feng Wu took a deep breath and stared at Jun Linyuan. "What is it?" The girl was talking to him. The crestfallen crown prince got his confidence back right away. He knew it. The girl still liked him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to talk to him. Once Feng Wu spoke, Jun Linyuan was as arrogant as before. He gave Feng Wu an indifferent glance and asked, "Interested?" Feng Wu nodded. "May I have a look?" As long as she took hold of it, she would never give it back. The abnormal flame bead was nothing of great value, but it had been taken out of little Feng Wu, which was why Jun Linyuan had kept it on him. Seeing it would remind him of little Feng Wu. Chapter 381, I'll cook for you. Seeing the eager look on Feng Wu's face, Jun Linyuan almost gave it to her right away. However, he snorted. The girl couldn't fool him. He knew perfectly well that the moment she took hold of the thing, she would forget all about him. Hence, Jun Linyuan darted an arrogant glance at Feng Wu. "You want to see it?" Feng Wu nodded eagerly. Little Phoenix held its breath and trembled with excitement. However, as Feng Wu eyed Jun Linyuan expectantly, the proud crown prince casually stuffed the bead into his waistband, then shrugged at Feng Wu. "Feng Wu! How annoying! You want it?" Jun Linyuan smiled like a fox. Feng Wu looked away, too pissed to talk to him. "You really want it?" Jun Linyuan poked Feng Wu's shoulder with a long finger. Feng Wu went on sulking. He was enjoying himself so much, wasn't he? Seeing that Feng Wu wouldn't talk to him, Jun Linyuan moved closer and poked Feng Wu in the shoulder again. Little Feng Wu, little Feng Wu. That was so childish. Feng Wu spun around and glared at him. "You must be enjoying yourself so much." She was really angry. She couldn't figure out why this world was so unfair, for everything she needed was now in Jun Linyuan's possession. Feng Xiaoqi, Little Phoenix's abnormal flame bead, the broken star piece to save her master. Jun Linyuan had them all, and he wasn't giving any of them back. The girl's features were exquisite. Her cheeks were flushed, and the angry fire in her eyes reminded him of an indignant little lion. She looked so lovely. Jun Linyuan had an impulse to rub her head, but he knew that would only set her off, so he restrained himself. He coughed into his fist. "I didn't say I wouldn't give it to you." New hope sprang up in Feng Wu. But she kept her angry face on and glowered at Jun Linyuan. "Name your terms." Jun Linyuan quickly glanced at Feng Wu and saw that she was still angry. He had yet to recover from the girl's furious accusations earlier, and he decided that it would be better not to enrage her further. "Maybe I'll just give it to you if I'm in a good mood." Jun Linyuan dropped the hint. Feng Wu then asked a silly question. Moving closer, she stared at Jun Linyuan unblinkingly. "What do I have to do to get you in a good mood, then?" "Kiss me." Those words popped into Jun Linyuan's head involuntarily, which frightened even him. Ahem, he cleared his throat to cover it up. Feng Wu felt uneasy. She sat down next to Jun Linyuan and grabbed him by the arm. Tell me. What do I have to do? She desperately needed what Jun Linyuan held in his possession. Her brother, the abnormal flame bead, the broken star piece. She needed them all. Well. Jun Linyuan was as scheming as he was proud. Once he realized how valuable the chip he held was, he knew he had a lot of bargaining power. I'm feeling peckish, rubbing his belly, he glanced at Feng Wu in a haughty manner. Feng Wu was speechless. She knew what was going on here. The crown prince was going to make her life difficult again. Well, she could adapt very easily and she didn't mind giving in a little every now and then. I can cook. Feng Wu swayed Jun Linyuan's arm back and forth. I'll cook for you. Looking down, Jun Linyuan met the girl's bright black eyes. His face lit up a little and his heart skipped a beat. However, he kept his face straight and pretended to ponder the proposition. Chapter 382, I thought His Royal Highness didn't like her? Feng Wu looked up at Jun Linyuan, stuck out her delicate little chin, and patted her chest confidently. I can cook anything. Whatever you want to eat, just tell me. Her big eyes were so limpid and her eyelashes batted like two little fans. She looked so lovely when she needed him. Jun Linyuan gave her a haughty glance. You mean it? Of course. Feng Wu said in excitement. All she needed to do was make this impossible crown prince happy. She would get him nice food, entertain him, and keep his mood buoyant. That way, she would get what she wanted in the end. Let's see what you can do. Jun Linyuan kept his face very straight. Once the carriage stopped and everyone got out, Feng was amazed to see the crown prince leading the way, looking exactly like a superior leader should, while Miss Wu, who had thrown such a tantrum only moments ago, followed behind the crown prince like a little maid. With his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan looked as proud as a peacock with its tail fanning out. Miss Wu, on the other hand, seemed to be fawning over him with all the nice words she could think of. This didn't seem right. Feng was puzzled and felt uneasy. Feng Wu ran after Jun Linyuan and asked in an enthusiastic voice, What would you like? My porridge is very tasty. Or noodles, if you feel like it. As for the dishes, I remember that you didn't like food with strong flavors back in northern border city. I can make something light. Anne. Jun Linyuan frowned when he recalled all those dishes Feng Sun and the others gobbled down before he could have any. He snorted. I'll have what you made last time. He would like to see Feng Sun try to take his food this time. Feng Wu nodded immediately. No problem. Whether Jun Linyuan's stomach could take that much spicy food wasn't her concern. She only needed to make sure that he was happy. Mr. Feng, where's the kitchen? Feng Wu ran up to Feng cheerfully. Feng still hadn't gotten over his bewilderment, but he hid it very well. He smiled politely. Miss Wu, do you need to cook? We have a small kitchen just around the corner. The residence was way too big and its wall ran down the entire length of the street. It would take them 15 minutes on foot to get to the main kitchen. Jun Linyuan went back to the main hall, while Feng showed Feng Wu to the small kitchen. There was everything, vegetables, fish, meat, you name it. Everything except for hot peppers. But that wouldn't be a problem, for Feng Wu had all the condiments she needed stored in her ring. This was the second time Feng Wu had set foot in the crown prince's residence. Although she had been unconscious the last time she was here. Chang San was shocked to see Feng Wu. Pulling Feng to the side, he said, Mr. Feng, isn't that Miss Feng Wu? Why did you bring her here? His Royal Highness doesn't like her. Wouldn't he be angry? There weren't many servants in the crown prince's residence, but every single one of them was very loyal. With a master like Jun Linyuan, the price of disloyalty was death. No one wanted that. The crown prince hardly ever brought any woman back, but today, a girl had just walked in, alive. Everyone was eager for some gossip and they all gathered around Chang San, then looked at Feng expectantly. Feng frowned. His Royal Highness doesn't like Miss Wu. How had Chang San come to that conclusion? As Jun Linyuan's personal guard, Chang San was very confident in his observation. It's true. I saw it with my own eyes. His Royal Highness was so mad last time because of her. Chapter 383, Zuo Qingluan's Informant. Jun Linyuan's attitude toward Feng Wu would decide how his servants treated Feng Wu, and all eyes were on Feng. Feng had always been discreet with his words. He wasn't going to reveal anything before the Crown Prince said something himself. Hence, he said with a straight face, just wait and see. He believed that anyone that wasn't blind would soon see the truth. However, the maids in the residence were a different story. Sister Zhenxia, a young maid named Minyu dashed into a small courtyard with the hem of her dress lifted off the ground. Zhenxia was doing some sewing when Minyu grabbed her hand. Sister Zhenxia. Bad news. As one of the senior maids who worked for Jun Linyuan, there was something very calm about Zhenxia. She gave Minyu an unhurried glance. Catch your breath, then speak. Minyu stomped her foot. Sister Zhenxia, you have to do something. That Miss Wu is here again. Zhenxia raised a pretty eyebrow. The Miss Wu that used to be engaged to His Royal Highness? That's her. Minyu was almost in tears. She's shameless. Last time, she pretended to pass out to get His Royal Highness to carry her back, and she's all over His Royal Highness again. She's here in the manor. I overheard that she was going to cook for His Royal Highness. The frown on Zhenxia's face grew bigger. She was making a new robe for Jun Linyuan. He never wore the same robe twice, which meant that he needed new ones all the time. Zhenxia smiled. Maybe she was only joking. No young lady can be that shameless. She wasn't. Sister Zhenxia, His Royal Highness isn't going to marry her, is he? As His Royal Highness's maids, we can't let someone as useless as her become our lady, right? Even Minyu, the lowest-ranked maid, dreamed about marrying Jun Linyuan one day, to say nothing of Zhenxia, the senior maid. The needle jabbed into Zhenxia's finger and she frowned in pain. Sister Zhenxia, Minyu stomped her foot in exasperation. Since His Royal Highness didn't throw her out, who are we to get rid of her? Picking up the black brocade robe, Zhenxia went back to her sewing. She said slowly, "You've delivered the message, now go back to your work." Gosh! Minyu stomped her foot one more time before dashing off. If Sister Zhenxia wouldn't do anything, she would go to Sister Yu Chun instead. Watching Minyu leave, Zhenxia narrowed her eyes a little. Feng Wu was back again. She put down the robe and sat down at her desk. She then took out a piece of paper and quickly wrote a letter. Feng Wu wouldn't like this letter at all, for the envelope read, "For Miss Zuo Qingluan's eyes only." Writing the letter was quick, but sending it out wasn't as easy a task. Zhenxia was still able to make it happen. Since Zhenxia wouldn't do anything, Minyu went to Yu Chun. What? Yu Chun wasn't as level-headed as Zhenxia. She smacked the table and rose to her feet. Feng Wu followed His Royal Highness in. What did His Royal Highness say? Did he have her thrown out? No. Minyu was almost in tears. His Royal Highness went back to his room and ignored her. But Miss Wu is so shameless. She went to the kitchen and insisted on cooking for His Royal Highness, thinking that she can seduce His Royal Highness that way. She's so. What about Chang San and Mr. Feng? Why didn't they stop her? Yu Chun was furious. That useless Feng Wu had to be delirious to think that she could have something to do with the Crown Prince. Chapter 384, How dare she hit her? Yu Chun couldn't even stand to hear Feng Wu's name mentioned alongside the Crown Prince. Chang San didn't seem happy and Mr. Feng wouldn't do anything about it. That's how Feng Wu was able to get in. Shame on her. Mengyu had stopped addressing Feng Wu as Mississippi. As a servant of the Crown Prince, she deemed herself superior to everyone else. Men are not suitable for this kind of thing. Yu Chun gave a wave of her hand. We can't let her do this to His Royal Highness. Come. Let's see what she's doing. As Jun Linyuan's senior maid, Yu Chun had 2 maids of her own. On her way to the kitchen, many heard that Yu Chun was going after Feng Wu, and more people joined them. In the end, there were over a dozen of them. Feng had gone back to the main hall to wait on the Crown Prince. Chang San was pondering Jun Linyuan's actual attitude toward Feng Wu. So, no one noticed Yu Chun's actions. Bang! Yu Chun kicked the door to the small kitchen open. That small was relative to the main kitchen. In fact, that small kitchen was nearly 500 square meters in size. Feng Wu was going to make 10 dishes in total and she had finished 5 of them already. The door was kicked open when she moved on to the 6th. Feng Wu looked back involuntarily. Yu Chun's head went blank when she saw Feng Wu. She was so beautiful. Those exquisite features, that snowy complexion, and her elegant composure. Her beauty was dazzling. It had only been 5 years and Feng Wu had turned into such a beauty. Instantly, Yu Chun felt like an ugly duckling herself and she was overwhelmed by a sense of inferiority. Sister Yu Chun, do you think we should tell Granny Yu about this? Mengyu reminded Yu Chun. Yu Chun had always been an impetuous girl. She had only been able to make it to the senior maid position because she had a good mother. Granny Yu used to be Jun Linyuan's wet nurse. Hence, Yu Chun had always felt that she was superior to any other servant in the residence and that she was the closest person to the Crown Prince. With her own maids, gradually, she began to consider herself a noble lady. And that was why she was bold enough to challenge Feng Wu. Narrowing her eyes, Yu Chun charged at Feng Wu and yelled, "You're that daughter of the Feng family?" Yu Chun had been Jun Linyuan's maid since she was little and Feng Wu had met her before. What? I'm too pretty after 5 years for you to recognize? Feng Wu said with a half-smile. Feng Wu had nothing nice to say to this girl, who had been drooling over her master since childhood and who was talking to her with such animosity. Those words successfully shut Yu Chun up. Flames of jealousy surged out of Yu Chun's eyes and she screamed, "You slut!" Feng Wu was never known for her good temper. And she certainly wouldn't stay silent when someone insulted her like that. Smack! Feng Wu slapped Yu Chun. It was quick, accurate, and very hard. It made Yu Chun spin like a top. No one had expected Feng Wu to hit Yu Chun all of a sudden. Everyone was astonished. How dare you hit me? Yu Chun was furious. Her contempt for Feng Wu was genuine. The Feng clan. That declining family was nothing compared with the Crown Prince. Feng Wu. She was a genius, but she was useless now. She was nothing to His Royal Highness. Just like how others addressed Chang San as General Chang, other young ladies would fawn over Yu Chun when she went out. How dare this shameless Feng Wu hit her? Chapter 385, She's Fierce. I didn't dare. I did hit you. Feng Wu smirked. How dare a little maid be so arrogant toward her? Nice. Very nice. Covering her cheek with a hand, Yu Chun snorted. Because she was one of the 4 senior maids of the Crown Prince, she had always been fawned on when she went out. Even Zuo Qingluan, the eldest daughter of the Zuo family, addresses me as Sister Yu Chun. Who the hell do you think you are? Yu Chun pointed at Feng Wu. You'll see what happens when you offend me. Take her. Yu Chun gave a wave of her hand. The dozen or so young maids behind her rushed out, trying to take Feng Wu down. Feng Wu's eyes flickered and she grabbed the dishes on the table. Thump. 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 All the dishes and plates were smashed onto the maids' heads. Crashed up, the maids were hit before they could even get close to Feng Wu. Their faces were covered in blood and it was a shocking sight. Yu Chun was astonished. You worthless piece of shit. How dare you do that in the Crown Prince's residence? Grabbing a broomstick, Yu Chun charged at Feng Wu. Feng Wu only smiled. Looking down at the dishes she had cooked, she gave a wave of her hand. Thump. 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 All 5 dishes landed on Yu Chun's head. Feng Wu had made Sichuan cuisine and the dishes were all spicy and hot red. And now, Yu Chun's head was covered in chili peppers. With the blood and the red peppers, it looked as if Yu Chun's head had been cracked open. The red was dazzling. And the chili peppers got into her wound and she trembled in pain. In the main hall, the proud crown prince reclined in a rocking chair with a book in his hands. He seemed to be absorbed in his reading. Feng wanted to remind his master that he hadn't turned a page in 10 minutes. Feng Wu's face kept popping into Jun Linyuan's head. She was accusing him one moment and glaring at him the next. He was reminded of her soft lips and he couldn't take it anymore. Tossing the book aside, Jun Linyuan looked up and met Feng's knowing eyes. What are you looking at? The teenager snapped. Feng sighed inwardly. The crown prince was so self-disciplined and so good at maintaining his concentration that no one could affect his mood. But that was before. He couldn't even focus enough now to read a book and his emotions were written all over his face. Sigh. Feng decided to remind his young master a little. Your Royal Highness, Miss Wu, is a rather nice girl, isn't she? No, she's not. Jun Linyuan glared at Feng and snapped, she's so short-tempered, as thin as a stick, stubborn, and ungrateful. Feng listened in silence to the crown prince's complaints. If she's really that awful, why do you keep going back to her? Chong San had noticed Yu Chun charging into the small kitchen with her minions and came to inform Jun Linyuan. He heard the crown prince's criticism before he walked in and he was dazed. So, His Royal Highness really didn't like Miss Feng Wu. But Mr. Feng was telling a completely different story, so which one should he believe? Chong San was confused. Just then, the sound of something being smashed to pieces rang out in the small kitchen. Jun Linyuan, who couldn't stop saying bad things about Feng Wu, bolted up and dashed off. Chapter 386, Your Royal Highness, she says she's in love with you. Jun Linyuan moved so fast that the gust of wind he created almost blew Chong San away. What happened? Feng frowned. Yu Chun gathered some maids together and they ran into the small kitchen with weapons. Why didn't you come sooner? Where Feng Wu's safety was concerned, even someone as composed as Feng couldn't stay calm. Chong San was confused. But His Royal Highness doesn't like Miss Wu at all. You idiot! Feng hurried toward the small kitchen. Jun Linyuan arrived at the small kitchen to find it a mess. Over a dozen maids and grannies were scattered all over the floor and Yu Chun was the only maid standing. Her head was covered in red peppers and her face was streaked with tears, blood, and the leftovers from the dishes, making her the most sorry picture. However, Jun Linyuan only looked at Yu Chun in passing before his gaze landed on Feng Wu. She was perfectly clean and unscathed, and looked completely innocent. Jun Linyuan's presence silenced everyone right away. No one dared to even let out a moan. All was quiet. They all looked at Jun Linyuan in disbelief. Why was His Royal Highness here? Feng rushed in and let out a breath of relief when he found Feng Wu unscathed. Phew! So many people would be dead if anything happened to her. Feng Wu's heart sank when she saw Jun Linyuan that she had been having so much fun dealing with these people that she had forgotten what she was here for. She had to make him happy, for only then would he give her what she needed. Look at this mess. Jun Linyuan would be so pissed. Cold air spread out from Jun Linyuan when his gaze landed on Feng Wu. He frowned and reprimanded her. What have you done this time? Yu Chun had been flustered by Jun Linyuan's cold glance. Hearing him speak to Feng Wu in that harsh tone, Yu Chun was relieved and she cried loudly. Your Royal Highness, sob, Miss Feng Wu was so rude to us. And she was so violent. Look what she did to me, you have to punish her. The others cried along once Yu Chun started and the room became very noisy. Blue veins popped at the corner of Jun Linyuan's forehead. Feng said in an impassive tone, "Keep crying and there will be blood." That successfully shut everyone up. Jun Linyuan frowned when he saw that the lower hem of Feng Wu's crimson skirt had been stained by the food. He took her soft hand and began to drag her out of the kitchen. Yu Chun's stomach lurched when she saw that and she had a bad feeling. She hastily cried out the first thing that came to her mind. "Your Royal Highness. Miss Wu said she was in love with you. She said she would never leave you alone." Yu Chun knew that the Crown Prince abhorred those infatuated women that wouldn't keep their eyes off him, which was why she had said it. She wanted the Crown Prince to find Feng Wu repulsive. However, the Crown Prince's reaction was a little strange. He darted a look at Feng Wu and his eyes flickered. He even smiled a little. "Did you really say that?" The proud Crown Prince gave Feng Wu an indifferent glance. Of course Feng Wu hadn't. "No, I didn't." Feng Wu raised her hands in protest. "I never said such things. She's making it up." Yu Chun smirked inwardly, but went on weeping. "Miss Wu, you can't go back on your word like that. I'm not alone here. They all heard it, right?" Chapter 387, You Dishonest Woman. Feng Wu was exasperated. Damn that Yu Chun. Seeing Feng Wu's reaction, Yu Chun was over the moon. "Feng Wu, you're dead." Jun Linyuan turned his gaze on Feng Wu again. Feng Wu waved both hands in denial. "I really didn't say that. I promise." "You did, you so did." All the maids and grannies who had been defeated by Feng Wu began to talk all at once. "You said you didn't mind the annulled engagement. You said you would stay with His Royal Highness even if you could only be his concubine or maid. You also said you didn't mind His Royal Highness not liking you. You said all you needed was your love for him. You told us to keep our distance from His Royal Highness, because you wanted him for yourself. We only fought with you because we couldn't stand it." Feng Wu stomped her foot in fury. That was pure slander. Bullshit. However, before she could say another word, she was dragged away by Jun Linyuan. Wait. Feng Wu stumbled after Jun Linyuan, but she still tried to explain to him in a loud voice, "They made all that up. I'm being framed here. They..." Thump. Jun Linyuan threw Feng Wu onto a cushioned chaise lounge. Thump. As soon as Feng Wu landed on it, Jun Linyuan fell on top of her and pinned her down. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu felt like crying. She had never felt so aggrieved. She didn't even like Jun Linyuan. Why was everyone doing this to her? Looking down, Jun Linyuan saw Feng Wu scratching and kicking with all four limbs, which reminded him of a defiant wild kitten. To Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu's struggles felt more like a gentle massage. He kept his brooding gaze on her, so focused that he forgot to blink. Everyone told him that this girl was in love with him. And he could sense her secret admiration for him as well. However, she kept on denying it and she would fight tooth and claw whenever he got near her. What was wrong? The clever, scheming Crown Prince was at a loss for the first time in his life. While Jun Linyuan's mind wandered off, Feng Wu seized the opportunity to escape. She twisted swiftly beneath him and got down from the chaise lounge, then ran as far away from him as possible. She was on the alert the whole time. Seeing how jumpy the girl was, Jun Linyuan was very amused. She's doing one thing when what she wants is the polar opposite, Jun Linyuan told himself in satisfaction. She's doing everything to catch my attention. Well, since she's enjoying it so much, why should I expose her? Once he figured that out, Jun Linyuan smiled a little and waved at Feng Wu. Come here. Going to him was the last thing in the world Feng Wu wanted to do. The guy was always pinning her down or kissing her against her will. Why should she listen to him? Not only didn't she move any closer to him, She started looking for a way out of the room. So, you don't want the abnormal flame bead? Jun Linyuan said in an unconcerned tone as he sat on the chaise lounge and crossed his long legs. The cat-like girl was so sensitive. He would give her an excuse and she would come to him right away. Feng Wu hesitated at the mention of the abnormal flame bead. Go to him, Little Phoenix was excited as soon as it heard that name, and it wouldn't stop prompting Feng Wu. And your brother? Jun Linyuan added in a careless tone. Feng Wu clenched her fists. Damn it! She would so punch Jun Linyuan in the face if she was capable enough. The guy was a total bully. Chapter 388, Do You Want a Scar? You ugly girl. It was so frustrating to be ordered around like this. Feng Wu took a deep breath and clenched her fists. When she turned around, she was beaming. If she had to give in, she would make sure she didn't do it for nothing. She was going to get everything she wanted. Come here. Jun Linyuan beckoned Feng Wu over. Feng Wu was all smiles. Your Royal Highness. Jun Linyuan shuddered. That's too fake. Stop it. Feng Wu snorted. You're so demanding. Now my smile is too bright for you. Jun Linyuan took a first aid kit from Feng, opened a bottle of pale purple potion, dipped a cotton wad in it, and pressed it to Feng Wu's cheek. Feng looked away in silence. This was the first time ever that the Crown Prince was taking care of another person's wound. That hurts, Feng Wu drew in her breath and pushed Jun Linyuan's hand away. Don't bother. I recover pretty fast and scabs will form pretty quickly. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu in surprise. Anyone else as beautiful as she was wouldn't stop taking care of their skin. This girl, on the other hand, didn't even blink when her face was scratched. He didn't know how that was even possible. And that offhandness was exactly what made Jun Linyuan hold her in high esteem. While Jun Linyuan was still trying to treat Feng Wu's wound, footsteps came from outside and someone fell to their knees with a thump and wailed, Your Royal Highness, sob. It was none other than that Yu Chun. Feng Wu stole a glance in that direction and saw an elderly granny standing there with a straight face, while Yu Chun was on her knees. Feng narrowed his eyes, looking displeased. His Royal Highness's first attempt to please a girl had been interrupted just like that. Your Royal Highness, seeing that Jun Linyuan wouldn't look at her, Yu Chun inched forward as she wailed until she was next to Jun Linyuan. Your Royal Highness. Jun Linyuan tossed the cotton wad away, then gave Granny Yu a brooding glance. Yu Chun was exhilarated. Because her mother was the Crown Prince's old wet nurse, her family was treated differently in the residence. Even the Empress Dowager spoke politely to Granny Yu, so Yu Chun was sure that the Crown Prince would show her some respect. However, Granny Yu's eyes widened when she saw what was going on. The stern-faced Granny saw with her own eyes the Crown Prince treating Feng Wu's wound himself. Granny Yu felt as if a clap of thunder had exploded over her head. She couldn't believe it. Her master never liked women getting too close to him, to say nothing of him touching them. He would flare up when women got within 3 meters of him. But now, he was treating Feng Wu himself. The Crown Prince? What did that mean? Didn't they say that Miss Wu wouldn't leave the Crown Prince alone? It didn't look like that at all. Feng Wu grabbed Jun Linyuan's wrist. Stop it. It hurts. Jun Linyuan pulled a long face and glared at her. Do you want to get a scar on your face? You'll be so ugly. It's none of your business. Shut up. Despite his harsh tone, Jun Linyuan was very gentle when he touched her face, as if he was handling the most delicate treasure. Granny Yu drew in her breath. This was bad. She hadn't gotten to where she was because of luck. Instead of appealing to Jun Linyuan for mercy on Yu Chun's behalf, Granny Yu dropped to her knees and said in a solemn voice, Yu Chun offended her superior on purpose, which is a crime punishable by death. Your Royal Highness, Yu Chun needs to be severely punished. Feng Wu looked at the strict-looking Granny and her eyes flickered. The others missed it, but Feng Wu noticed Granny Yu darting a malicious look in her direction. However, Jun Linyuan was. Chapter 389, Zuo Qingluan. Looking at Granny Yu, Feng Wu's eyes glinted coldly. Yu Chun was an imbecile, but not her mother. Granny Yu had both the guts and the brain. It wouldn't be wise for Feng Wu to make an enemy of her. However, since Yu Chun had decided to work against Feng Wu, there was no way around it. Yu Chun looked up in surprise when she heard Granny Yu's request. Mother, I suggest a punishment of 80 lashes with the cane. If your Royal Highness will give the order, please. Granny Yu said in an even voice. Caning? 80 lashes? Yu Chun thought she was going to lose her mind. Mother, Your Royal Highness, I would like to request the punishment be executed immediately. Granny Yu was trying to figure out how important Feng Wu was to Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan's eyes flickered. Go ahead. Those two words astonished everyone inside and outside the room. Jin Xia was outside, but she heard that cold voice. Caning Yu Chun 80 times, immediately. Go ahead, go ahead. Jin Xia clenched her fists so tightly that her fingernails almost dug into her palms. His Royal Highness always covered for his own people whatever their faults. As Granny Yu's only child, Yu Chun had practically grown up with his Royal Highness. However, even with that history, Yu Chun was still nothing compared with Feng Wu, the ex-fiancée. Who was this Miss Wu to his Royal Highness? Jun Linyuan's instruction immediately silenced all the servants in the residence, and everyone held their breaths. Isn't 80 lashes a bit too much? Tugging at Jun Linyuan's sleeve, Feng Wu frowned. Jun Linyuan darted a look at Feng Wu. How many, then? 60. Feng Wu smiled. Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu. Make it 60, all right? She'd be dead after 80 lashes, Feng Wu said lightheartedly. Everyone kept their silence and lowered their heads, but their ears pricked up. Miss Feng had just touched a sore spot. There were a lot of gloating grins and even Feng couldn't help but frown. His Royal Highness's word was the final verdict and he never changed his mind, not for anyone. Asking for a favor at this point would have serious consequences. No one made a sound. Just when a lot of people were waiting for Feng Wu's downfall. Jun Linyuan waved his hand impatiently. Fine, 60. Feng. Feng took the hint right away. There were too many people in the room for Jun Linyuan's liking. Yu Chun didn't dare make a sound, for she knew the Crown Prince very well. Try to delay the punishment with crying, and Jun Linyuan would make it 600 instead. But everyone stole glances at Feng Wu before they retreated. There was amazement, astonishment, and reverence in their eyes. Miss Wu had asked for a favor and nothing happened to her. How was that even possible? However, Feng cleared them all out before they could express their amazement. They were still bewildered when they got outside. That's not right. That's an understatement. That's so big. Chang San was equally baffled. They only summoned the courage to talk once they were far enough from the main hall. What happened there? Why do all of you look like you've seen a ghost? It's unbelievable. Miss Wu is really something. Why do you say that? Yu Chun was going to get caned 80 times for offending Miss Wu, but Miss Wu appealed to His Royal Highness and His Royal Highness changed it to 60. Do you remember what happened with Miss Zuo a while ago? As in Zuo Qingluan? Chapter 390, Be nice to me, okay? That's right. Master Chang San made a mistake and Miss Zuo appealed to His Royal Highness on his behalf. Then everyone turned to look at Chang San. They all remembered. The punishment was 60 lashes to begin with, but after Zuo Qingluan's appeal, the proud Crown Prince made it 120. The flesh on Chang San's back had been torn to shreds. It was horrifying. No one had thought less of Miss Zuo, for she had only done it out of kindness. However, given the incident with Feng Wu today, they began to feel otherwise. Chang San frowned. I heard from those at court that Miss Zuo is going to marry His Royal Highness. Everyone turned to look in the direction of the main hall. Things were getting complicated. Jin Xia kept her silence the entire time, but the look on her face was indecipherable. Feng Wu. Feng Wu. Feng Wu. You just won't go away. Feng Wu and Jun Linyuan were the only two left in the room. The sound of Yu Chun being caned came from outside. Her screams were blood-curdling. Right now, 2 guards held a cane each and they took turns hitting Yu Chun. Granny Yu stayed with Yu Chun and kept her cold gaze on those guards. The art of caning was quite complicated. If the cane was aimed at one's lumbar vertebra, it would take less than 5 strikes to paralyze a person for the rest of their lives. Under Granny Yu's stern gaze, the guards exchanged looks and struck with less and less force. After all, she used to be His Royal Highness's wet nurse and she was in charge of the daily tasks in the residence. Back in the main hall, Feng Wu was deep in thought. From how hostile Jun Linyuan had always been toward her, Feng Wu had expected Jun Linyuan to stand up for his maid and try to punish Feng Wu. She had been ready for another row with the crown prince. However, Yu Chun turned out to be the one who got punished. Moreover, the crown prince had changed his mind because of what she said. Judging by the astonished looks the others gave her, could it be that Jun Linyuan had never changed his mind for another person before? Can it be that Jun Linyuan actually likes me? Since she had no one else to turn to, Feng Wu could only ask Little Phoenix. Little Phoenix, the unreliable advisor, shuddered. Have you lost your mind? What? Feng Wu was bewildered. Little Phoenix asked, does he talk to you nicely? Feng Wu shook her head. No, he's always grumpy. Little Phoenix then asked, has he ever said things like he likes you or he finds you adorable? Feng Wu said, are you kidding me? He only says how much he doesn't like me. Little Phoenix rolled its eyes. So, what gave you the idea that he's in love with you? You're overthinking it. Feng Wu rubbed her nose. But, didn't he punish that maid? Little Phoenix snapped, that girl was insubordinate. What else was he supposed to do? Feng Wu said, but, if he doesn't like me, why does he make me stay with him all the time? Little Phoenix threw a dirty look at Feng Wu. He's just enjoying himself. To him, you're like a spiritual pet. He'll cast you aside when he's busy and only come to play with you when he's bored. Isn't that what he's been doing? Was it? Feng Wu thought back to what Jun Linyuan had been doing and she saw the light. You're so right, Feng Wu sighed. Unaware that it had misled Feng Wu, Little Phoenix wiggled its colorful tail and gloated. You won't find a bird as clever as me every day. So, be nice to me, okay? Chapter 391, A Trap. What are you thinking? Jun Linyuan noticed the expressions on Feng Wu's face. She had been bewildered at first, then looked conflicted, before her eyes lit up. Jun Linyuan frowned. Feng Wu rubbed her nose and looked at him funny. So, he was taking her for a pet? I can see it in your eyes. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu. I thought you were hungry. Feng Wu reminded him. And I thought you were going to cook for me. Feng Wu shrugged. I was, then your Yu Chun came in and everything got smashed. There's nothing left. Jun Linyuan frowned and looked displeased. Feng Wu grinned at Jun Linyuan. You know what? The cries out there are really loud. Is Yu Chun going to make it? 60 lashes is a lot. It'll be such a gory scene, wouldn't it? She had set up a trap there by changing it to 60 lashes. Jun Linyuan's frown grew bigger and he looked even more unhappy. How about we go have a look? I'll get to play the savior if Yu Chun is badly hurt. Feng Wu rose to her feet after that. As Feng Wu walked out, Jun Linyuan had no other choice but to follow. In the courtyard outside the main hall, Yu Chun lay on her stomach on a bench with a piece of white cloth in her mouth. She was crying loudly and her eyes shone with fury and provocation when she saw Feng Wu come out. "Feng Wu, we'll wait and see. I'll kill you the first chance I get." Yu Chun swore inwardly. Granny Yu stood opposite her with her chin raised in an arrogant manner. Her face was stern and her eyes cold. Seeing Jun Linyuan and Feng Wu come out, the two guards holding the canes exchanged looks and both were flustered. "How many now?" Feng Wu asked. 59, one of the guards lowered his head and replied in a low voice. Jun Linyuan took one look at Yu Chun and his face turned as dark as a stormy sky. The temperature in the courtyard dropped. Seeing Feng Wu come out, Granny Yu blanched and she no longer looked so haughty. Feng Wu had appealed to Jun Linyuan on Yu Chun's behalf, and in Granny Yu's mind, Feng Wu had shown the white feather. That had made Granny Yu reckless. She had been standing there to intimidate the two guards so that they would go easy on Yu Chun. Little did Granny Yu expect that the appeal had been part of Feng Wu's plan. Granny Yu had made a great show of actively seeking punishment for Yu Chun. However, she was taken by surprise when Jun Linyuan came out himself to check. Her cover was blown. The Crown Prince would discover how she had abused his trust and how pretentious she had been. Granny Yu's face darkened. "This is great," Feng Wu let out a low, amazed cry. "I thought Yu Chun's skin would be in tatters after 60 lashes, but I don't see any blood. I guess I don't need to play doctor today." Both guards holding the canes panicked. They had neglected their duty in order to do Granny Yu a favor. "Your Royal Highness," both guards broke into cold sweats. Jun Linyuan crossed his hands behind his back and his countenance was colder than a winter morning. A storm seemed to gather above the courtyard. He then turned his sharp gaze on Granny Yu. Granny Yu dropped to her knees with a thump. Although Feng hadn't said anything so far, the look he gave Feng Wu was very appreciative. Miss Wu was such a bright girl. She had gotten Granny Yu to lower her guard by pleading on Yu Chun's behalf, and when Granny Yu manipulated the guards as she had planned, Miss Wu showed His Royal Highness what the old lady was really doing. Chapter 392, Don't Mess with Miss Feng Wu. The truth was all out now. Granny Yu had been such a canny, experienced actress that even Feng hadn't been able to pick out any flaws. Feng had been about to remind Feng Wu to keep an eye on Granny Yu, for the old lady was very narrow-minded and would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Jun Linyuan kept his gaze on Granny Yu for a moment and the look in his eyes was bone-chillingly cold. He promptly left the courtyard after that. Granny Yu's stomach lurched and she almost passed out. She wouldn't be frightened if the Crown Prince had reprimanded or punished her, for that would prove that the Crown Prince still needed her service. However, he had left without a word. This was much worse than she thought. Granny Yu lowered her head and cold sweat soaked her clothes. She clenched both fists. What Feng Wu had done was very impressive. Feng darted an indifferent look at Granny Yu before making the announcement. "Granny Yu has offended His Royal Highness. Lock her up. His Royal Highness will decide what to do with her later." Mother, Yu Chun hadn't seen that coming at all. All she did was challenge Feng Wu a little, but Feng Wu didn't get so much as a scratch while Yu Chun was being beaten up here. What was wrong with this world? Wasn't Feng Wu just a useless girl? Feng turned his cold gaze on Yu Chun and left another instruction. "Yu Chun hasn't been properly caned. She gets another 60 lashes. This time, it would be 60 lashes for real." Yu Chun fainted when she heard the announcement. As for you lot, Feng darted a glance at the 4 guards in charge of the caning. "You're getting 60 lashes each. Questions?" Of the 4, 2 guards were in charge of counting while the other 2 did the actual caning. They exchanged looks and all 4 of them let out breaths of relief. They had thought they would get the death penalty for this. What a relief. Feng looked around, his voice cold and emotionless. "Gather all the servants here. Everyone is going to watch the caning." Feng was doing this for their own good. Many didn't know how special Miss Wu was to His Royal Highness, so Feng took the opportunity to let them see that. Yu Chun had pretended to pass out, but she fainted for real now. Feng gave a wave of his hand. Do it. Thump. The sound of canes hitting flesh resonated in the yard. All the servants watched and everyone was shaken. Granny Gong, the senior granny who was second only to Granny Yu, turned in the direction of the main hall with an indecipherable look in her eyes. The caning was a great lesson, and she now knew that Miss Feng Wu wasn't someone they could mess with. Not only that, they had to show her respect and dote on her. In the main hall, Jun Linyuan sat there, still emanating a cold air. Feng Wu sat next to him and would look up at him every now and then, but Jun Linyuan kept his silence, his face livid. Feng Wu looked out the window. It was getting dark and she couldn't stay here overnight. Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu poked his arm with a finger. The crown prince ignored her. Sir. Feng Wu poked his arm again. The crown prince ignored her. Your Royal Highness. Feng Wu poked his arm again. Jun Linyuan finally darted her a haughty look. Are you mad? Feng Wu forced a smile. Jun Linyuan had everything she desperately needed, her brother, her abnormal flame bead, and her broken star piece. She had no choice but to fawn over him. Of course Jun Linyuan had figured out the trap Feng Wu had set for Granny Yu back there. Jun Linyuan was appeased slightly after Feng Wu moved a little closer. He stared at Feng Wu. I'm hungry. I'll go cook for you. Feng Wu dashed off right away. Seeing how hasty the girl was, Jun Linyuan smiled as Feng Wu ran off. Chapter 393, What now, Your Royal Highness? All 10 dishes were bright red in color and Feng Wu set them out on the table. After Granny Yu's imprisonment, Granny Gong was now in charge. Granny Gong had learned that Feng Wu wasn't someone they could afford to offend, so she entered the kitchen with a bright smile. She spotted the spicy dishes as soon as she set foot inside, which made her eyes flicker and the corner of her mouth twitch. Miss Wu. Granny Gong smiled brightly and her voice was warm and kind. Do you need anything? I brought maids with me and they're at your service. Seeing that Feng Wu was cleaning up after she was done cooking, Granny Gong said in a hurry, Oh God, Miss Wu, that's not befitting a young lady, you'll hurt your delicate hands. Xiangcao, Bei, don't just stand there. Xiangcao and Bei rushed over, got Feng Wu away from the sink and took over the cleaning themselves. Feng Wu could tell that Granny Gong was doing this out of kindness, so she gave the granny a smile and said, Shall I serve the dishes, then? Granny Gong wouldn't have let Feng Wu do it, if it wasn't for the intimidating air the crown prince was giving off. She didn't dare enter the main hall herself, let alone any of the other maids. Miss Wu was the only one His Royal Highness would be happy to see. Hence, Granny Gong replied with a smile, Of course. Miss Wu, please don't hesitate to give us instructions if you need anything. Feng Wu gave her a nod, then went off to serve the dishes. After Feng Wu left, Xiangcao asked in bewilderment, Granny, do we have to be that polite to Miss Wu? Even the servants of the Crown Prince's residence were considered superior figures when they went out. As the most senior granny in the residence, Granny Gong was so influential that even someone like Mrs. Yen would try to befriend her. Granny Gong cast a stern look at Xiangcao. You girls know nothing. You don't have to understand, but just remember this, Miss Wu is always right. But, Bei said hesitantly. Even if His Royal Highness favors Miss Wu, Miss Wu is still going to be the one he marries in the end, isn't it? So, was it wise to take Miss Feng Wu's side now? Granny Gong looked at each maid in turn. Although she couldn't put all the pieces together yet, Feng could. That steward knew better. Miss Wu, well, I'm not sure that the marriage will take place after all. Anyway, just make sure you never offend Miss Wu from now on. Granny Gong said in a warning tone. His Royal Highness's attitude aside, Feng Wu's own cleverness alone was enough to impress Granny Gong. After some thought, Granny Gong decided to go have a look at the main hall. In the main hall, Feng Wu had squeezed all the dishes onto the table and she asked Jun Linyuan in a cheerful tone, So, happy now? Jun Linyuan was still slouching on the chaise lounge and he gave Feng Wu an indifferent look. It's all set. Didn't you say you were hungry? Come here and eat, Feng Wu prompted. However, the crown prince only leaned back, rested his head on his hands, and stared at her. What now, your royal highness? Feng Wu hurried to his side like a butterfly and took him by the arm. Quickly. It won't taste as good if the food gets cold. I'm not doing it for the third time. Hurry up. Jun Linyuan let Feng Wu pull him to his feet and followed her to the table. In a corner of the room, Granny Gong and Feng exchanged looks. Feng raised an eyebrow. What did I tell you? Granny Gong nodded. She saw it now. No one else would dare persuade His Royal Highness when he didn't want to eat, and they wouldn't have succeeded even if they had been daring enough to try. Chapter 394, Sad Eyes. Feng Wu pressed Jun Linyuan down into his chair at the table, then smiled at him with her palms together. Eat, then give me back my brother. Jun Linyuan frowned and stared at Feng Wu. Feng Wu was confused. What? You don't like the food? But you haven't tried any of them yet. How do you know you don't like them? Jun Linyuan kept staring at Feng Wu with his bright, black eyes and his lips were pursed in a thin line. After a long moment, he gave her an aggrieved look. The apron. Feng Wu smacked her forehead. They had eaten at her place before, which was why she had the aprons. Where was she supposed to get one here in the Crown Prince's residence? Feng Wu shook her head. Don't you change your clothes every day? Throw them away if you get grease on it. Just eat. Feng Wu handed him a pair of chopsticks as she spoke. It was getting dark and without her at home, Lady Wang could make her beautiful mother's life miserable. Feng Wu wanted to get back ASAP. However, Jun Linyuan kept staring at her with sad puppy dog eyes. Recalling what a neat freak Jun Linyuan was, Feng Wu took a deep breath. Fine. I'll get you an apron. Granny Gong. Granny Gong stepped out right away. Could you fetch me an apron, please? Feng Wu said. Granny Gong went out in a hurry, and only let out a breath of relief when she was outside. His Royal Highness was really. Granny Gong had only had suspicions before. However, after seeing how the Crown Prince behaved around Miss Wu, Granny Gong was convinced that His Royal Highness was in love with the girl. Quickly. Get me an apron. Granny Gong sent a servant to fetch it. Although she was bewildered herself as to why His Royal Highness was so insistent on having an apron. Soon, the servants came back with 100 aprons. They were of every color, every pattern, and every material one could think of. Which one? Feng Wu asked Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan glanced at her. Up to you. And that was the most difficult choice. Feng Wu would rather he told her his preference. Well, if he said so. Feng Wu's eyes flickered teasingly. She picked a bright red one, then turned to Jun Linyuan with a grin. This one looks really nice. There you go. The look Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu made her shudder inwardly. Fine, she would stop trying to make fun of him. The next one Feng Wu picked was of a light blue color that matched Jun Linyuan's clothes. This looks nice. The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes wasn't that cold anymore. So, this one was fine. Put it on, then. Feng Wu handed him the light blue apron. However, the Crown Prince just kept staring at her with those eyes as deep as bottomless pits. Feng Wu was bewildered and a little cross at that look on his face. She was really worried about what was going on back at home and she really needed to go back now. She lost her patience. I fetched you the apron and picked the right color as you asked. What more do you want? Why is it so difficult to get you to eat? Feng was rendered speechless by Feng Wu's words. The muscles on Granny Gong's face twitched. That was so bold. Even she could tell how impatient Miss Wu was and there was no way that the bright Crown Prince could miss it. His Royal Highness was so arrogant and short-tempered. Miss Wu was going to be in a lot of trouble. Chapter 395, Willingly. Just as Granny Gong started to worry for Feng Wu, Jun Linyuan said quietly, "Didn't you put it on for me last time?" Wait. Did he sound aggrieved? It couldn't be. Granny Gong's eyes widened and she abruptly looked up at the Crown Prince. She thought she was overestimating His Royal Highness's patience for Miss Feng Wu, but those sad puppy dog eyes? Seriously? Granny Gong had thought that her young master was only mildly interested in Miss Wu, but as it turned out, she was so shocked that she lost her composure. Cough. Feng coughed into his fist to warn Granny Gong. And Granny Gong took the hint. She lowered her head right away, disappearing into the shadows. She shielded the excited look on her face from the others, but it did nothing to quell her astonishment. She finally figured out why Miss Feng Wu was able to get rid of His Royal Highness's long-trusted wet nurse with such a simple trick. Because His Royal Highness was crazy in love with Miss Wu. And one could say that Miss Wu was invincible. Granny Gong almost felt pity for Granny Yu. Meanwhile, things weren't going smoothly for the young couple at the table either. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu fought back her anger. As much as she was eager to get back home, she knew perfectly well that Jun Linyuan could easily keep her here forever. She pulled Jun Linyuan to his feet. "Fine, I'll put it on for you. Raise your hands. Now put your hands through here. I'll tie the strings into a bow. Is that it?" Feng Wu didn't walk around Jun Linyuan to tie the bow, but put her arms around him. And it looked like she was hugging Jun Linyuan voluntarily. Feng and Granny Gong quickly lowered their heads after a brief glance. That one look was enough to frighten them out of their wits. The smile on His Royal Highness's face and that satisfied look in his eyes. This was the first time they had seen the Crown Prince this way after working for him for so many years. That was it. Their Crown Prince was hopelessly in love. Feng and Granny Gong both smiled wryly. Feng Wu had no idea of any of this. After tying the apron on, she grinned at Jun Linyuan. "Your Royal Highness, are you ready to eat now?" Jun Linyuan glanced casually at the table. Last time, Feng Sun and the others had been all over the food, but now, he had everything to himself and little Feng Wu had made all the dishes for him alone. The Crown Prince raised his chin in satisfaction. "My hands hurt." Blue veins popped at the corner of Feng Wu's forehead. Why was it so difficult to get him to eat? Taking a deep breath to fight back her fury, Feng Wu put on a perfectly sweet smile. "Your Royal Highness, what are we going to do about that?" Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu a half-smile. "I'm not happy if I don't eat." And when Jun Linyuan wasn't happy, he wouldn't give her the things she needed. Feng Wu smiled even more sweetly to the point that it looked cloying. "So, Your Royal Highness, shall I feed you?" Jun Linyuan raised his chin arrogantly. "That won't be necessary." He was being very difficult, again. Feng Wu took Jun Linyuan by his arm. "Your Royal Highness, please let me feed you." Jun Linyuan said haughtily, "No." "Your Royal Highness," despite her frustration, Feng Wu made herself look very eager as she said, "Your Royal Highness, it'll be my great honor to feed you. Would you grant my request, please?" Chapter 396, You Dummy. Jun Linyuan glanced at Feng Wu unhurriedly. "You want to do it?" Feng Wu's eyes twinkled and she nodded repeatedly in an ingratiating manner. "Yes. Yes, of course." The Crown Prince sounded reluctant. "Well, fine. Could it get any more astonishing than this?" Granny Gong's entire face was twitching. What happened to His Royal Highness? Who was this person and where was the Crown Prince she had known for nearly 20 years? And did Feng know about this? Granny Gong darted a glance at Feng. Feng smiled bitterly. Well, he was as shocked as she was. Jun Linyuan didn't make it any easier for Feng Wu as he ate. He took his time and the meal lasted 2 hours. Seeing the 10 empty plates on the table, Feng Wu was slightly satisfied as well. She said proudly, "I see that you really enjoyed my cooking." However, Jun Linyuan only said arrogantly, "Says who?" "Excuse me." All the plates were empty. However, Feng Wu had figured out what Jun Linyuan's temperament was like by now and she nodded right away. "That's right. Your Royal Highness doesn't like my cooking at all. I had to force you to finish everything." "That was more like it." Jun Linyuan snorted. "Your Royal Highness, are you happy now?" Feng Wu looked out the window. The sun had set and it would be too late if she didn't leave now. "I need to take a walk." Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and walked out of the room. After a few steps, he turned around with a frown, since Feng Wu hadn't followed him out. Feng Wu rubbed her forehead. What did she ever do to deserve such an unreasonable crown prince? However, after everything she had done, she couldn't give up now. Hence, Feng Wu followed him out in a hurry and walked behind him. After the young couple left, both Feng and Granny Gong sighed in relief. His Royal Highness's, Granny Gong was still quite shaken. Was that really His Royal Highness? That wasn't an impersonator or something? Feng rolled his eyes. "Woman, what the hell are you thinking?" Feng said grumpily, "Have you seen His Royal Highness behave this way around anyone else other than Miss Wu?" Recalling the imprisoned Granny Yu, Granny Gong straightened her face and shook her head. His Royal Highness was the same toward everyone else, relentless, overbearing, and merciless. Miss Wu is the only exception. So, His Royal Highness is really in love with Miss Wu? Shush! Feng cautioned Granny Gong. We don't have to point out everything. Got it? Yes, of course, Granny Gong grinned. I always thought that His Royal Highness was too cold. He didn't even feel human. I thought he was going to be lonely forever, even if he got married. Seeing how childish he is around Miss Wu, I find him much more endearing this way. He's like a normal human being now. Granny Gong was over the moon. She had decided that she would be very nice to Miss Wu from now on and she would make sure that everyone else in the residence did the same. The Crown Prince's residence was a vast place and Jun Linyuan was walking very fast. Feng Wu was having a hard time following him. Jun Linyuan stopped abruptly. Bang! Feng Wu bumped into his back, which almost gave her a nosebleed. You dummy! Jun Linyuan brushed Feng Wu's hand away from her face and he looked flustered. He raised his voice without realizing it. Are you alright? Did you break your nose? An idea struck Feng Wu. What if? Chapter 397, Burst into Tears. An idea struck Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan had been refusing her the things she needed, but what if she showed the white feather now? Feng Wu decided to put her sense of shame aside in order to get those things back from Jun Linyuan. Putting her hands over her nose, she let the tears come to her eyes. It hurts. Jun Linyuan glowered at Feng Wu. Why did you bump into me? Are you an idiot? After that, he picked her up in his arms and headed back toward the main hall. There were servants everywhere in the residence. Naturally, they stayed out of Jun Linyuan's way when they saw where he was going. However, they saw everything anyway. And they watched in disbelief. Miss Wu was being carried. By their crown prince. In both arms. Xiaoqi and Bei, the two maids under Granny Gong, covered their mouths in astonishment. They hadn't thought much of Granny Gong's order until they saw what was going on now. Oh my god. His Royal Highness. Xiaoqi and Bei exchanged looks and both saw astonishment in each other's eyes. His Royal Highness is so, and Miss Feng Wu is. They had never seen His Royal Highness like this after working in the residence for so many years. Xiaoqi and Bei weren't the only ones shocked. Jin Xia was as astounded as everyone else. She was standing under an eave and she stared at what was going on with a desperate look in her eyes. She bit her lower lip until it bled. She had sent 2 letters already. And now, It was time to urgently send the third one. Miss Zuo Qingluan had to come back to the imperial capital. Feng Wu knew none of this. Her head had gone blank after Jun Linyuan picked her up. She forgot to breathe. What was wrong with Jun Linyuan? However, since she was playing the weakling here, she couldn't struggle, or she would give herself away. She had made her bed, so she had to lie in it. It was so embarrassing that Feng Wu wanted to bury her face in her hands. However, she was soon over it. On second thought, since she was playing the role, she would make sure she didn't do it for nothing. Jun Linyuan had carried her back to the main hall while Feng Wu was turning all the options over in her head. Get me the first aid kit. Blue veins popped on Jun Linyuan's forehead when he saw the blood running down from Feng Wu's nose. It doesn't hurt that bad, actually, Feng Wu said feebly when she saw Jun Linyuan's livid face and the frightened servants. Quiet. Jun Linyuan glowered at her. Why didn't you look up? Were you looking for wallets on the ground? Feng Wu wailed, I was thinking about other stuff. Jun Linyuan snapped, what could make you forget where you were going? Feng Xiaoqi, Feng Wu sobbed. Poor kid. What did he do to deserve this? He got snatched away just like that. I don't know how he is now. I don't even know if he's still alive. My mother can't sleep at night and she weeps whenever she thinks of him. Feng Wu grew up watching her beautiful mother sobbing and weeping and she could mimic it perfectly. Moreover, she was always such a fierce girl around Jun Linyuan. Showing weakness now had a great effect on him. Feng Wu had only been pretending to cry in the beginning. However, she was reminded of Feng Xiaoqi's situation and her tears became genuine. Jun Linyuan stared at her. Chapter 398, Jun Linyuan, you yelled at me. Blood smeared her face, the rims of her eyes were red, and tears rolled down her fair cheeks. For the first time in his life, Jun Linyuan knew what pity felt like. Hey, Jun Linyuan gave Feng Wu's smooth cheek a gentle poke. Feng Wu ignored him and went on crying. She had no idea what she was crying over, she just felt very sad. Jun Linyuan poked Feng Wu in the shoulder and said hesitantly, don't cry. However, the more he tried, the more Feng Wu was reminded of what Jun Linyuan had put her through since they met, which only upset her further and she cried even harder. Jun Linyuan was dumbfounded. Growing up, he had kept girls from getting too close with his emotionless face and haughty demeanor. Never had he tried to comfort a girl. He had no idea what to do. For the very first time, the crown prince was at a loss. He quickly glanced at Feng. Feng, the answer to all questions, stood there with his eyes lowered, as if he was in a trance. From everything Jun Linyuan had done to her, to the broken star piece, then to her beautiful master, the longer Feng Wu thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. She sobbed so hard that she could hardly breathe. Jun Linyuan had to admit that Feng Wu's tears brought out all the pity in him. Fine, fine. You want Feng Xiaoqi, right? Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead. Feng. Feng went out before Jun Linyuan could finish his sentence and he came back shortly afterward with a 12-year-old boy in one hand. Sister. Feng Xiaoqi was thrilled to see his big sister. He dashed toward Feng Wu like a cannonball and threw himself into her arms. Feng Wu was still lost in her grievances when Feng Xiaoqi jumped into her arms. Her eyes lit up. Xiaoqi. Are you alright? Are you hurt anywhere? Were you ill-treated? Jun Linyuan rolled his eyes. Exactly how cruel did she think he was? Once the initial excitement receded, Feng Xiaoqi recalled the state of anxiety he had been in lately and he burst into tears as well. Sister. Brother. The two wrapped their arms around each other and cried even louder. Jun Linyuan was speechless. Feng Wu. Keep crying, I dare you. Jun Linyuan scolded. Make another sound and I'll kill Feng Xiaoqi. Before Feng Wu could say anything, Feng Xiaoqi was intimidated by the crown prince's manner and he stopped crying right away. Feng Wu paused for a brief moment and stared at Jun Linyuan with her red-rimmed eyes. Her long eyelashes were wet with her tears, which only accentuated her impeccable beauty that she had tried pleading at first, but to no avail. However, as soon as she was in tears, Jun Linyuan had given Feng Xiaoqi back. So, the guy had a weak spot for her tears. Once Feng Wu figured that out, she started crying again. Only this time, she was faking it. She hurled accusations at Jun Linyuan as she howled. "You yelled at me! Jun Linyuan, you yelled at me!" Had it been any other girl, the crown prince would have gotten Feng to throw her out already. But Feng Wu wasn't just any girl. Moreover, Jun Linyuan felt a throbbing pain in his chest as he looked at Feng Wu's tear-streaked face. He was overwhelmed by a strange, suffocating feeling. Jun Linyuan rubbed his forehead. He hadn't meant to. Feng Wu wailed and whimpered until her whole body trembled. Even Feng Xiaoqi was frightened by her reaction. Taking Feng Wu's hand, he said, "Sister, are you all right? Don't be upset, sister. Gosh, my sister's passed out. Well done, little brother." Chapter 399, Very Intimate. That was very well said, little brother. Feng Wu was having a hard time keeping up her acting, but she had to, after Feng Xiaoqi asked the questions in his anxious voice. She couldn't back out now. She had started this and she had to make it to the end. Gosh, crying like this was so exhausting. Luckily, the crown prince was convinced by her acting. After quickly glancing at Feng Wu, he rubbed his nose and reflected on the possibility that he had maltreated Feng Wu. Sister, is it because of him? I'll get back at him for you." After that, Feng Xiaoqi charged at Jun Linyuan like a dauntless calf. As much as Feng Xiaoqi revered Jun Linyuan, he cared about his sister even more. Anything his sister said was right. All his sister's orders had to be carried out without question. His sister had always been composed and level-headed, which convinced him that his sister had to have been so abused for her to cry like that. Seeing Feng Xiaoqi dashing off like a reckless calf, Feng Wu grabbed him from behind right away. Threatening her with Feng Xiaoqi's life had become one of Jun Linyuan's habits, and the last thing Feng Wu wanted was to provide the crown prince with more excuses to do so. "I'm fine, really," Feng Wu sniveled. She had cried too hard to stop altogether. "Sister." Blue veins popped on Feng Xiaoqi's forehead. "You're always so proud and you never cry. He must have treated you so horribly for you to cry like this." Feng Wu was embarrassed that she had only been faking it in the beginning. Realizing that he had gone too far, Jun Linyuan took out the abnormal flame bead and waved it around in front of Feng Wu. "I thought you wanted this." "Yes." Before Feng Wu could reply, Little Phoenix screamed in excitement and nodded its head repeatedly. "Yes. Yes. It's mine. Mine." Once it consumed the abnormal flame bead, Little Phoenix would be able to leave the ring. It had a teleportation skill, which Feng Wu could use as a last resort at a critical moment. Feng Wu was thrilled at that thought. However, she also knew that Jun Linyuan wouldn't make it that easy for her. She knew it in her gut. "Your terms." Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan, alarmed. Jun Linyuan darted her a contemptuous glance. "You were crying so hard and I thought I would just give it to you, but since you're questioning my intentions. You said you would give it to me." Feng Wu jumped at him. However, Jun Linyuan raised his hand and it was beyond Feng Wu's reach. Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu rushed to his side, leaned against him, and reached out with a hand. However, she was too short and Jun Linyuan made sure that she couldn't touch it. "Give me." "No, I won't." One was eager and the other proud. Both were exceptionally childish. Feng Xiaoqi rubbed his eyes. That wasn't right. Who was this childish wild girl and what happened to his level-headed sister? Plus, his sister had always kept her distance from the crown prince like a mouse evading a cat, but the way they were interacting now, why did it look so strange? At that moment, thump. Jun Linyuan tripped and fell backward on the chaise lounge. Feng Wu pounced on him, trying to snatch the abnormal flame bead away. However, Jun Linyuan raised his hand over his head and stopped Feng Wu with his free hand by wrapping it around her waist. No matter how hard Feng Wu tried, she couldn't get it. Those two. Feng Xiaoqi's mouth fell open. Only seconds ago, his wise sister had been crying her eyes out. But now, she and the crown prince looked so intimate. Chapter 400, Is His Royal Highness asking for a love token? Looking down, Feng Wu saw her position and she blushed. She quickly shoved Jun Linyuan away and rose to her feet. Embarrassed, she straightened her clothes and was back to the elegant Feng Wu whom the others knew. Jun Linyuan also realized how physically close the two of them had been. He stood up after Feng Wu did and cleared his throat awkwardly. Somehow, Feng Xiaoqi felt that there was more to his sister and the crown prince than met the eye. He turned his pleading eyes on Feng. Feng looked straight ahead with a solemn face. Feng Xiaoqi then turned to look at Granny Gong. Granny Gong kept her face undisturbed and serious. Feng Xiaoqi scratched his head. Was he imagining things? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. You said you would give it to me, but all you're doing is playing with me. You must be having so much fun. Seeing Feng Wu's still swollen eyes, Jun Linyuan felt his heart soften and he almost handed her the bead. However, he stopped himself at the last moment. Keeping his face impassive, he glanced at Feng Wu. You want it? Let's trade. Sure. With what? Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. Jun Linyuan's gaze shifted from Feng Wu to Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Wu immediately pulled the bewildered Feng Xiaoqi behind her and glowered at Jun Linyuan. Stop trying to do anything to Xiaoqi. You're not taking him away again. Rubbing his chin, Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu with his bright black eyes and gave her a teasing smile. Little Feng Wu, as a young lady, I'm sure you're good at needlework, right? No, I'm not, Feng Wu said matter-of-factly. Young ladies had to be good at needlework. Says who? Great, Jun Linyuan said arrogantly. I'll trade it with your embroidered pouch. Feng Wu took her pouch off her waistband, pried Jun Linyuan's fingers open, and stuffed it into his palm. There's 10 taels of silver in it. Take them all. Can I have the bead now? Jun Linyuan glanced at the pretty, impeccable embroidered pattern on the pouch and raised an eyebrow. You made this? Feng Wu casually said, No, my mum made it. Jun Linyuan's face darkened a little and he tossed the pouch back to Feng Wu. Keep it. Hey, Feng Wu yelled at Jun Linyuan in frustration. You asked for my pouch, then you tossed it back. What's your problem? Keep acting like this and you'll never get a wife. Jun Linyuan stared back at Feng Wu with his brooding eyes, which made Feng Wu press a hand to her chest and stumble back. With a snort, the crown prince stormed off. A few steps away, Granny Gong, who had kept her face very serious, looked at Feng in surprise. Was His Royal Highness asking for a love token? Feng shrugged. Don't ask me. I can never follow His Royal Highness's twisted logic. After another shrug, Feng followed his young master out. That Jun Linyuan is unbelievable. Gosh! I'm so fed up with him. Resting her hands on her waist, Feng Wu's cheeks puffed up in frustration. Granny Gong cleared her throat in embarrassment. Miss Feng, I think His Royal Highness wants a pouch with your own needlework. Feng Wu was bemused. Why does it matter whose needlework it is? It's still a pouch. Granny Gong was screaming in her head. Her young master was difficult enough, but Miss Feng Wu had no idea what was going on either. How was it ever going to work between the two teenagers? She dropped another hint for Feng Wu. Well, there's a huge difference. Maybe what His Royal Highness wants is a pouch made by Miss Feng yourself. Chapter 401, I'd rather choose Feng Sun. Feng Wu snorted. So, he just won't let me have any peace, will he? Granny Gong was rendered speechless. No, it's not like that. His Royal Highness really likes you. Granny Gong couldn't hold back anymore. She had to tell Feng Wu. Feng Wu was baffled. His Royal Highness likes me? Granny Gong, please don't make fun of me. No one is going to believe that. I'm not making fun of you. It's true. His Royal Highness really. Granny Gong decided to help Jun Linyuan out. She was about to be more explicit when a figure showed up at the door. It was Chong San, the captain of Jun Linyuan's guards. Chong San said with a straight face, Miss Wu, His Royal Highness would like you to leave now. Feng Wu was astonished by Granny Gong's words. Jun Linyuan liked her. However, Chong San's words were her wake-up call. Jun Linyuan likes me. Granny Gong, is that how His Royal Highness shows his affection? Please don't say that again. Other people may make a big deal out of it and His Royal Highness's reputation would be tarnished. After giving Granny Gong a long look, Feng Wu stormed off, dragging Feng Xiaoqi along with her. Granny Gong was speechless. Your Royal Highness, I tried, I really did. Taking a deep breath, Granny Gong glared at Chong San. You, idiot! What have you done? Chong San was at a loss. What did I do? That was His Royal Highness's order, word for word. Granny Gong was so frustrated. Don't you know what His Royal Highness is like? Why are you doing exactly the same thing? You could have translated those words for His Royal Highness. It's late and it's foggy outside, so you'll escort Miss Feng back home for her safety. Couldn't you put it that way? Chong San asked, is that really necessary? Yes. Yes, of course. Granny Gong gritted her teeth and stressed each word. Feng Xiaoqi and Feng Xiaoqi were on their way back. Luckily, Feng Wu hadn't visited the Crown Prince's residence for nothing. At least she had gotten Feng Xiaoqi back. Feng Xiaoqi had remained in that bewildered state since earlier, and all he could think of now was his dauntless sister straddling the Crown Prince. Looking up, Feng Xiaoqi saw his sister marching ahead in frustration and he felt uneasy. His sister had always been so composed and he could only recall a handful of occasions when she lost her temper. But she had never been as angry as she was now. Could it be that his sister was? As someone with a big sister complex, Feng Xiaoqi wouldn't let that happen. Sister, Feng Xiaoqi hesitated. What? Feng Wu was beating Jun Linyuan up in her head when Feng Xiaoqi's voice woke her up from her reverie. Holding Feng Wu's hand, Feng Xiaoqi asked gingerly, the Crown Prince is a bad guy, isn't he? Of course. Feng Wu said firmly. Feng Xiaoqi then asked, so? Sister, you won't fall in love with him, will you? Feng Wu smirked. Him? I'd rather fall in love with Feng Sun. Phew. Feng Xiaoqi was elated by his sister's pronouncement and they went back home happily, hand in hand. Neither of them noticed that in a dark corner a few steps away, a pair of pupils contracted at Feng Wu's words. Blue veins popped on his forehead and his face turned livid. That was just great. He clenched his fists. Northern Feng Mansion. Feng Sun was reclining in a rocking chair and feeding an azure-eyed cat. Get your ass out here. A sudden roar stirred the entire mansion like a clap of thunder. Feng Sun, what? Chapter 402, I want to marry Feng Lu. The entire Northern Feng Mansion was shocked. Who was that? Northern Feng General was stationed at the northern border, but his wife lived in the mansion. She shuddered at that sound. Sister-in-law. Mrs. Ning, who had just arrived at Northern Feng Mansion, was also frightened. Ning Chenxi had been so eager to get to the imperial capital so that he could propose a marriage to the Feng family. He feared that Feng Wu would become someone else's wife if they didn't travel fast enough. He had been urging Mrs. Ning on the entire time until they arrived at the imperial capital. My lady, the voice came from the young lord's courtyard. Granny Tao, Lady Northern Feng's personal maid, saw that both ladies were frightened and explained to them in a hurry, "It's His Royal Highness." Lady Northern Feng let out a breath of relief when she heard that name. Taking Mrs. Ning's hand, she smiled. "Sister-in-law, don't worry. His Royal Highness grew up with A Sun and they're best friends. Everything's fine." Mrs. Ning patted her chest. "I thought my heart was going to jump out of my throat. I'm so relieved to hear that it was only His Royal Highness. I met him on our way back and he helped us out." "Really?" Lady Northern Feng hadn't been told and she asked about what happened. Mrs. Ning's main purpose here was to get Ning Chenxi his bride. Hence, she told the lady everything in detail and concluded with a smile, "The Feng family has an amazing daughter. Not only is she a great doctor, she's exceptionally beautiful as well." "A great doctor and a beauty?" Feng Wu's name came to Lady Northern Feng right away. Lady Northern Feng found Feng Wu very impressive. She had liked the girl since she was little and had always wanted her as a daughter. And her affection for Feng Wu had only increased when Feng Wu grew up. However, the kid was without cultivation now and anybody could pick on her if they chose to. Lady Northern Feng had been very displeased with what happened at the birthday banquet earlier today. She had been about to step out to defend Feng Wu, but one thing led to another, and before she realized it, the Yen family was having the worst day of their lives. Mrs. Yen was the eldest sister of Northern Feng General, and Lady Northern Feng had had to help out. After everything was finally settled, Feng Wu was long gone. "Sister-in-law, what do you think?" Mrs. Ning asked for Lady Northern Feng's opinion. "Pardon?" Lady Northern Feng had wandered off. "You were saying." "I'm going to propose marriage to the Feng family, and ask for the hand of their sixth daughter for Ning Chenxi. Sister-in-law, we would like to have you as the go-between." Mrs. Ning smiled. "What?" Lady Northern Feng was astonished. "Feng Lu?" "That's right, the sixth daughter of the Feng family," Mrs. Ning confirmed. "I mean," Lady Northern Feng found it hard to believe. "Sister-in-law, are you sure you want the sixth daughter, not the fifth?" "Of course. It's Miss Lu we want. Had it not been for her, I wouldn't have been able to give birth to my twins and all three of us would be dead now." Mrs. Ning was very earnest. Lady Northern Feng rubbed her forehead. She had thought it would be Feng Wu. So, it was Feng Lu. "If it's Feng Lu you want, I would advise against it." Lady Northern Feng waved her hand. "Why?" Mrs. Ning's eyes widened. "Because she's a vicious girl. Having a daughter-in-law like that will only ruin the peace of your family. You wouldn't be getting a daughter-in-law, but a disaster." Chapter 403, I'm Challenging You. Lady Northern Feng held nothing back. "If you ask for my opinion, I absolutely disagree with your choice of daughter-in-law." "Aunt." Just then, a figure rushed in and dropped to his knees in front of Mrs. Ning. It was a teenager with delicate features and he kept his back ramrod straight. "Chenxi, you." "Aunt, please grant me my wish," Ning Chenxi pleaded. It was love at first sight. "Aunt, I want no one but Feng Lu as my wife." Lady Northern Feng stared at Ning Chenxi in astonishment. What was wrong with this stupid kid? He wanted no one but Feng Lu. Had he lost his mind? Lady Northern Feng took a deep breath. "Stand up. You're being silly." "I won't, unless you make a promise." Ning Chenxi looked Lady Northern Feng in the eye. Lady Northern Feng almost choked. Exactly how blind was this kid to fall in love with Feng Lu at first sight and want no one but her? "You idiot." Lady Northern Feng had always been irascible and she couldn't fight back her anger anymore. Rising to her feet, she pointed at Ning Chenxi and reprimanded him. "Do you have any idea what kind of a girl Feng Lu is? You want no one but her? Do you have any idea what a shameful thing she did in the Yen Manor today?" Mrs. Ning frowned a little. "Sister-in-law, what happened to Miss Feng?" "What happened?" Lady Northern Feng snorted. She's quite the piece of work. She ganged up with Yan Yan and tried to do harm to Feng Wu and Lady Tang. But Feng Wu was too smart to fall victim to their plot. Not only did she come out unscathed, she made them reap what they had sown. Mrs. Ning and Ning Chenxi exchanged looks. That didn't sound right at all. Miss Feng Lu is beautiful and brilliant and she'd never do something like that. Ning Chenxi glared at Lady Northern Feng. Aunt, please don't slander Miss Feng Lu just because you're trying to stop me. Lady Northern Feng was baffled and she almost passed out from her rage. You're an idiot. Mrs. Ning didn't look too happy herself. Sister-in-law, Miss Feng Lu is a smart and pretty young lady and I know she's very level-headed. There must be some misunderstanding here. Lady Northern Feng snapped. There is no misunderstanding. Feng Lu is abominable. Don't be fooled by her pretty face. Come to think of it, little Wu was the best. Too bad that she wouldn't marry Feng Sun. While Lady Northern Feng was arguing with her guests, Feng Sun was having troubles of his own. With that angry roar, Jun Linyuan showed up in midair. Feng Sun, who had been caressing the cat, was dumbfounded. However, once he saw that it was Jun Linyuan, he ran out, still holding the cat, and shouted in excitement. Boss Jun, what's up? Incoming enemies? After that, Feng Sun dropped the cat, rolled up his sleeves, and was combat ready. Jun Linyuan didn't say anything. Where are they? Where are they? Feng Sun's eyes darted around, but he didn't see anyone. In the end, he turned to Jun Linyuan in bewilderment. Only then did he notice Boss Jun's stunning but livid face. The air he gave off was so cold that Feng Sun shuddered inwardly. Beat Boss Jun, an ominous feeling came over Feng Sun and he called out to Jun Linyuan gingerly. Glaring at Feng Sun, Jun Linyuan gritted his teeth and his eyes spat fire. Feng Sun. What? Draw your sword. What? I'm challenging you. The Crown Prince pointed the tip of his sword at Feng Sun. Chapter 404, Draw Your Sword. What? Feng Sun was dumbfounded. Challenge? From Boss Jun. What was this all about? Draw your sword. Driven mad with jealousy, Boss Jun glared at Feng Sun. Beat Boss Jun, what's this about? Challenge me? 10 of me put together wouldn't be able to stand a single strike from you. What kind of challenge is this? Feng Sun was almost in tears. What was happening? Strike! The Crown Prince shouted angrily. I won't. Do it. No. Feng Sun stuck out his chest and resisted as best as he could. You were born into a better family than I was, you're more handsome, smarter, and you're much more capable than I am. I'm inferior to you in every possible way. And you're challenging me? You're humiliating me on purpose, aren't you? You have no heart. The more Feng Sun said, the sadder he became. He felt so miserable that he almost burst into tears. However, his buddy paid no attention to his complaints and spared no effort in this challenge. Poor Feng Sun. He was bruised all over after Jun Linyuan was done. Jun Linyuan pointed at Feng Sun. Stay away from you-know-who. He promptly left after that. Feng Sun stood there, utterly baffled, and he had the most innocent look on his swollen, bruised face. Stay away from I-know-who. Who's that supposed to be? Boss Jun, who are you talking about? The Feng Manor. Feng Wu took Feng Xiaoqi back home. She had been gone the whole day and when she still wasn't back after dark, everyone in Fallen Star Yard was flustered. Seeing Uncle Cho come back, Granny Zhao hurried toward him. Anything? Have you seen Miss Wu anywhere? Uncle Cho's haggard face was ridden with anxiety. I searched every inch of the way from here to the Yen Manor and Miss Wu is nowhere to be found. How about you? Heard anything from the others? Granny Zhao was as agitated as ants on a hot pan. I asked everyone and searched every corner of the manor. She's not here. Uncle Qiu was exasperated. What about Lady Wang? What did she say? Didn't she take Miss Wu out with her? Did she have anything to say about Miss Wu being missing? Tears welled up in Granny Zhao's eyes. Lady Wang and the master had a huge row after they came back, and it's like a circus on that side of the manor now. No one would tell me anything. When I pressed, they told me that Miss Wu left before they did and they had no idea where she was. Where's Qiuling? Asked Uncle Qiu. Qiuling wouldn't believe them and went to question them again. It's been over an hour since she left. Is she going to be all right? Disasters were piling up one after another and Granny Zhao thought she was going to have a heart attack. Just then, Feng Wu jumped over the wall into the courtyard with Feng Xiaoqi behind her. Miss Wu. Granny Zhao turned around at the noise and she cried out in pleasant surprise when she saw Feng Wu. Granny Zhao rushed to Feng Wu's side, held her hands, and burst into tears. Miss, are you all right? Are you hurt? Uncle Qiu came up to them anxiously as well, his eyes fixed on Feng Wu the whole time. Feng Wu was bemused. I'm fine. What's going on? Oh, I brought Xiaoqi back. Young Master Qi. Uncle Qiu and Granny Zhao cried out in surprise when they noticed Feng Xiaoqi. Young Master. You're back. Granny Zhao couldn't stop crying. A moment ago, they thought Miss Wu was in danger, but now, their mistress had come back, unscratched. And she had brought young Master Qi back with her. They were so thrilled. Where's Mum? Feng Wu asked. Granny Zhao said, My lady was so worried about you and she couldn't stop crying. You know she's prone to throwing up when she cries. We only just put her to bed. She'll cry and throw up again if she wakes up and you're not here. Chapter 405, Luckily, Xiaoqi is a naive boy. They were still talking when they heard rustling sounds inside. Feng Wu's beautiful mother then dashed out. Xiao Wu. Seeing Feng Wu, the beautiful lady threw herself into her daughter's arms and wouldn't let go. She was trembling so violently that her slim figure reminded one of a butterfly on a winter day. She looked so frightened. Patting her mother gently on the back, Feng Wu comforted her in a soft voice. There. I'm back, aren't I? Sob, the beautiful lady sobbed uncontrollably and her trembling hands wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's clothes. Xiao Wu. Don't leave me behind, Xiao Wu. No, of course not. Xiao Wu is right here with you. Feng Wu consoled her mother patiently. No one knew what the beautiful lady had gone through, but when Feng Wu's dad, who had long disappeared, brought her mother home back then, the beautiful lady had the intelligence of a 5-year-old. Thanks to Feng Wu's protection all these years, her mother was able to stay innocent and unharmed. The beautiful lady still hadn't recovered from the fright and she wouldn't let go of Feng Wu no matter what. Mum, look, Feng Wu gestured at the person behind them. Mum, Feng Xiaoqi ran to their side and waved at his mother. However, the beautiful lady only gave Feng Xiaoqi a slight nod. Xiaoqi, you're back. She turned back to Feng Wu immediately and went on weeping. Xiao Wu, my sweetest Xiao Wu. Don't leave me like that again, okay? Feng Wu comforted her patiently. Don't you feel hurt? Someone spoke next to Feng Xiaoqi. Feng Xiaoqi looked up and saw that it was someone they had met in northern border city before. Brother Yuminji? Feng Xiaoqi, the naive kid, didn't find Yuminji showing up here at this late hour out of the ordinary at all. He only asked offhandedly, why should I feel hurt? Yuminji was surprised. Aren't you sad that your mother prefers your sister over you? Feng Xiaoqi was bewildered. What's wrong with that? Of course my sister deserves more attention. Why should I feel sad about that? Because that's not normal. All other families value their sons over their daughters. Yuminji looked at Feng Xiaoqi sympathetically. Exactly what had they taught this boy? As his sister's ultimate supporter, Feng Xiaoqi was offended and he said indignantly, "My sister is always right and we must do everything she says. Of course everyone loves her." Yu Minji was taken aback by that matter-of-fact statement. Feng Wu finally noticed Yu Minji and she stared at him in an intimidating manner. "What do you think you're teaching my brother?" "Nothing. It's nothing," Yu Minji waved his hands hastily. "Says you." The boy pointed a finger at Yu Minji angrily, then turned to his sister. "Sister, he said that Mum likes only you and not me. He also said that our family prefers girls over boys." Yu Minji felt like crying. He was just being nosy and it was some harmless small talk. Why was this kid being so serious? Feng Wu stared at Yu Minji with eyes devoid of warmth. It was quite frightening. Yu Minji stumbled back. "I was just chatting." "And that was the first topic that came to mind?" Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Luckily, Xiaoqi was a naive kid. Anyone more sensitive would have been persuaded. Yu Minji felt his knees buckle under Feng Wu's glare. "What are you doing here?" Feng Wu frowned. Chapter 406, He Will Protect His Sister. Yu Minji cheered up after giving Feng Wu another look. "Little Feng Wu, you know what?" He moved closer as he spoke. Feng Wu threw a dirty look at him. "What?" "Ha ha ha ha," Yu Minji guffawed. "I made a deal with my family and I'll be staying in the imperial capital from now on. You can come to me for anything. I'll always be on your side." Feng Wu was intrigued. "People from your family can walk around in public just like that? Why can't we?" Yu Minji looked back at Feng Wu in confusion. "Aren't you from the Dark Court? I thought the royal family would come after you the moment you show your face." Feng Wu was bewildered. Yu Minji pursed his lips. "That was before. Things are different now." "Different how?" "You want to know?" "I'm not going to ask you." Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. She wasn't going to play along. "Come with me if you want to know." Yu Minji tried to take Feng Wu's hand. "I'll tell you if you keep me company." Feng Wu was reminded of the things she had to put up with at Jun Linyuan's place and she flared up. Glaring at Yu Minji, she bellowed, "Does everyone think that they're the ruler of the world now? And you think you can just order me around like that? In your dreams." A hush fell over the courtyard after Feng Wu blurted out those words. Everyone looked at Feng Wu in amazement. What was wrong? Yu Minji looked at Feng Wu timidly and said in a pitiful voice, "I didn't try to make you come with me. You didn't have to yell at me." He was a very good-looking teenager and when he went all puppy dog eyes like this, he looked adorable. Feng Wu realized that she was venting her anger on the wrong person after she lashed out. Rubbing her forehead, she said, "I'm sorry. That wasn't meant for you." "Who was this for, then?" Yu Minji asked curiously, his eyes sparkling. Feng Wu ignored him. She turned to Granny Zhao and asked, "Where's Chilling? Why isn't she here?" Granny Zhao had been meaning to tell Feng Wu the news and she said in a hurry, "Miss, we thought you were in some sort of trouble and Chilling went to Lady Wang to ask for information, but she's been gone for too long. Shall I go get her?" Recalling the humiliation which her uncle and aunt suffered at the Yen Manor, Feng Wu's face darkened a little. She waved at Granny Zhao. "I'll go get her myself." "Sister, I'm coming with you." Holding Feng Wu's hand, Feng Xiaoqi looked up at his sister, his tone insistent. He was going to protect his sister. Feng Wu nodded. "Uncle doesn't know you're back yet and we need to tell him anyway. Let's go." "I'm going with you." Yu Minji tried to take Feng Wu's free hand. Feng Wu cast a stern look at Yu Minji and he drew back his hand awkwardly. However, he insisted. "I'll keep you company." Feng Wu rolled her eyes at him. "Keep me company? Who are you to me?" "So, I can go if I'm somebody to you." An idea struck Yu Minji. His eyes twinkled. Was little Feng Wu suggesting something? Was the girl asking for a marriage proposal? At that idea, Yu Minji felt warmth run down his spine and everything seemed to light up in front of him. Feng Wu shook her head in resignation. I don't want to talk to you. Just go back home. The look in Yu Minji's eyes gave Feng Wu the creeps and she reminded him, it's late. You really should leave now. After that, Feng Wu took Xiaoqi's hand and hurried off toward Flying Snow Building. Chapter 407, Feng sang. However, Yu Minji was a little concerned, for little Feng Wu didn't have any cultivation and his family would never let him marry such a girl. Take her as a concubine? Somehow, Yu Minji knew in his heart that the moment he said that to her, little Feng Wu would slap him until he was dead. Such a dilemma. Feng Wu had no idea what the silly teenager was thinking about as she made her way to Flying Snow Building with Feng Xiaoqi. It was very quiet outside Flying Snow Building. All the servants held their breaths and were as quiet as cicadas in late autumn. Quarreling voices came from inside the building. Feng Wu recognized the voices of Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang. So much for their supposedly steadfast love. Feng Wu smirked a little. Miss Wu. Seeing Feng Wu arrive with the boy, Granny Gui, who had been guarding the entrance, raised her voice all of a sudden. The quarreling voices subsided right away. Glancing at Lady Wang's most loyal granny with a half-smile, Feng Wu led Feng Xiaoqi into the building with a devil-may-care attitude. It was quite the scene in Flying Snow Building. Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang were there as expected, as were Feng Yuran and Feng Lu. There was a fifth person, whom Feng Wu recognized right away. She was the third daughter of the family. Lady Wang had 4 daughters in total. The first 2 had been married off. The third one was the most talented and had been sent to Imperial College. Right now, she stood there, eyeing Feng Wu with contempt. Everyone stopped what they were doing and turned to look at Feng Wu when she walked in. Feng Wu wasn't intimidated by all the gazes at all. Leading Feng Xiaoqi to her uncle, she told her brother, Xiaoqi, this is our eldest uncle. Feng Xiaoqi greeted Feng Yanfeng politely with a bow. A million things came back to Feng Yanfeng when he saw Feng Wu's face. Blue veins popped in the corner of his forehead when he recalled what happened earlier at the banquet in the Yan Manor. Feng Wu. How dare you come here now? Feng Yanfeng didn't even bother to look at Feng Xiaoqi, for in his eyes, as a level 1 spiritual master, Feng Xiaoqi was as useless as Feng Wu herself. He glared at Feng Wu. You ungrateful, malicious girl. Are you trying to destroy the Feng clan? How could you turn against your family? You don't deserve to be a daughter of this clan. Feng Yanfeng screamed at Feng Wu, venting his rage. Lady Wang was the one he had been screaming at earlier. Once Feng Yanfeng learned that Sir Yan had eliminated him from the candidate list for that position he had been longing for, he rushed back home and roared at Lady Wang, blaming her for bringing up such an unruly daughter. Lady Wang and Feng Lu had both been shouted at, and both had red slap marks on their cheeks. That was how mad Feng Yanfeng was. Seeing that Feng Yanfeng had turned his rage on Feng Wu, Lady Wang and Feng Lu exchanged looks and both saw satisfaction in each other's eyes. Holding Feng Xiaoqi's hand, Feng Wu stood ramrod straight. She gave Feng Yanfeng a contemptuous snort. Uncle, what are you talking about? I tried to destroy the Feng clan. Enlighten me, then. What did I do? Do I need to remind you what you did? Feng Yanfeng was almost too infuriated to stand still. Do you know how hard I tried to get that position in the Ministry of Official Personnel? If I can become the assistant minister, our clan will rise again. But thanks to you, all is lost. Chapter 408, The Unbridled Feng sang. Feng Yanfeng looked very frightening when he was enraged. Lady Wang and her children kept their silence, as did the maids and grannies. However, Feng Wu was completely unaffected and she responded with a smirk on her face. Uncle, are you sure I'm the one to blame? Feng Yanfeng stared at Feng Wu. Stop making up excuses. Sensing Feng Yanfeng's hostility, Feng Xiaoqi clenched his fists and shouted at Feng Yanfeng. "Don't you dare pick on my sister." His childish voice and behavior warmed Feng Wu's heart. Rubbing Feng Xiaoqi's head, Feng Wu smiled. "Xiaoqi, don't worry. The only picking on you'll see is me doing it to other people." Tch, Feng Sang, who had been standing in the corner, snorted. She didn't try to hide her contempt for Feng Wu at all. Hearing Feng Wu's comment, Feng Yanfeng fumed with rage. "Feng Wu. After everything that's happened, your only choice is to repent." "For what?" Feng Wu said indifferently. "Admit your mistake." "What did I do?" Feng Wu smirked. "Uncle, you were there at the Yen Manor yourself and you saw everything. Feng Lu and Yan Yan tried to set me up and all I did was deal with them as they tried to do to me. What was wrong with that? Of course it was your fault." Lady Wang glowered at Feng Wu. "Fine, we admit that Feng Lu started it, but with what happened, shouldn't you try to cover it up like a big sister should? But what did you do? Instead of covering for her, you let it out and made such a big scene out of it. There's no taking it back now and you've ruined Feng Lu's reputation. People will be talking about her behind her back. You're the one to blame if she can't find a good husband." Feng Wu found these people extremely unreasonable. She gave Lady Wang a half-smile. "So, Aunt, are you saying that even though I was the victim, under the circumstances, I should take the blame and call that for the greater good?" Feng Yanfeng and Lady Wang were rendered speechless. Feng Lu stepped out, clenching her fists. "Wasn't that what you were supposed to do? Feng Wu, you were brought up by the clan and you should be grateful for that. Why couldn't you bear that petty a grievance?" Feng Yanfeng glared at Feng Wu. "Exactly. Why couldn't she swallow it for the Feng clan?" Feng Wu smiled. "My dear sister, if you love the clan that much, why did you ruin our reputation and your father's career? You should be able to sacrifice yourself for the clan and endure that petty a grievance, shouldn't you?" Those were Feng Lu's own words. Feng Lu was furious, but she couldn't think of anything to say in retort. Clap, clap, clap. Feng Sang, who had been standing in a corner, walked out, clapping her hands. She stopped in front of Feng Wu and looked down at her. There was something lofty and arrogant in her eyes when she looked at Feng Wu. Rather than seeing a person, Feng Sang looked like she was evaluating a commodity. "Feng Wu, I didn't expect that you would continue to be this arrogant after losing your ability. That's actually quite impressive." Feng Sang stared at Feng Wu. "But, I think I have a duty to inform you that in this world that values martial prowess above all else, you need more than words." On guard, Feng Wu narrowed her eyes. Feng Sang was very unbridled. Feng Wu could tell more or less tell what Feng Sang's cultivation level was. As a newly admitted student to Imperial College, Feng Sang was a level 1 spiritual grandmaster.